Alrighty, everyone. I think we can go ahead and get this party going. How do I do this again? How do I start the stream? How does this work? Hello? Okay, there we go. Figured it out. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Amphibia and Owl House discussion live stream. I don't see anyone in my chat yet, which is only slightly concerning. I hope that we're good. I hope everyone's connected and we're actually like streaming and everything's working. Oh, Morgan is here. Hello, welcome. Thiz is here too. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Welcome.
I actually looked up how to pronounce that,
Oh, you
and
did?
I have forgotten how to pronounce it.
Oh no.
But I can look it up again if you want, and I can tell you how to pronounce it. But I did look up how to pronounce that word.
All right, great. First time catching it live. Welcome, that guy who makes videos. Welcome. Glad you could catch us while we were live. Hello, Robin Embers. Took a while to get current on the Owl House after Easter break for sure. Got your popcorn and mango Pepsi. That sounds amazing. Hope you enjoy. Zoe is here as well. Welcome back. Sheep is here. Hello. Magical is here too. Welcome, everyone. Oh my gosh, I was so worried that like no one was here in the beginning, and now all of you are here. Thank you so much for joining us. Tyrone is here as well. Thank you. We might have a few new people stop by the stream today. We had quite a few people check out the recording for the last week's discussion stream on Hollow Mind, which is really awesome. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and tuning into our discussions, whether you're tuning in live right now or if you're checking this out in the future and watching the VOD. Thank you so much. I really super appreciate it. Hyrule's here too. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. I'm joined as always by my lovely guest, Tom from Curmudgeon Media. You want to say hi to the people, Tom?
You know, I went to type something in the chat, and it's coming up with all these rules.
Oh no.
It's telling me that before I chat, I'm not allowed to bully, harass.
Yes, I added some rules to the chat.
I'm not allowed to bully, harass, or hate speech anyone. I'm not allowed to send death threats. Like, what is this? That's all I ever do, every stream.
That's true. That's why I had to put the rules in, Tom, because it was getting out of hand. It was getting
every single time somebody would say literally anything in the chat, I was like, I swear to God, I'm coming for you.
Exactly. All right.
Even if all they said was hello.
Exactly. That's why I had to lay down the law. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you all are enjoying the new little rules in the chat. Thanks so much for joining us live here today. Let's get into it because we have a lot to discuss today for both the Owl House and Amphibia. Last week we definitely focused more on Owl House than we did for Amphibia because there was more to say, I feel, than there was for Amphibia. But this week we definitely have a good amount to say about both. So we want to get right into it. And we'll definitely start with this amazing Owl House episode. I love this episode. It was really awesome. It definitely shocked me. Even though I think so. The last episode that focused on King, Elsewhere and Elsewin, we actually didn't do a discussion stream for that episode because we had to like take that week off for whatever reason. So we didn't get a chance to discuss that episode, and we never really got a chance to get into King or his character or theories around him. Like a lot of people were suspecting that he could be a Titan for a long time. A lot of people thought, oh no, it can't be possible. He looks too different from the Titan, or he doesn't look like this guy that we thought was his father, right? I think a lot of people were also suspecting this father character to be a red herring of some kind, like, oh, this guy can't be actually King's father. That like feels too easy, and I feel like a lot of people saw some sort of twist coming, but I don't think anyone saw this twist coming, which is part of what I love so much about this show, right? Like you can theorize, you can have your like crazy, wild out there theories, and a lot of them could definitely be true, but how exactly they're true, I feel, is always surprising and always like keeps us on our toes, which I really appreciate and love about this show. I definitely suspected that King could be a Titan, especially even in season 1 when they were like, oh yeah, he's some creature, we don't know what kind of demon he is, right? And then that kind of kept being this recurring plot thread that kept coming up, right? Like in knocking on Hootie's door, right? Hootie being like, we don't know what you are. Like there's no record of like what type of demon you are, right? And so I feel like there was a lot of hints as to the importance of what King is, right? So I feel like a lot of people were close in guessing that he could be a Titan. But then, of course, we got the reveal, right? We got the confirmation in this episode. Do you have any general thoughts, Tom, before we get into it?
The reveal that Hootie was King's dad the whole time. Wow, that really got me. Um, I didn't expect that.
Truly shocking,
Uh,
truly shocking.
yeah, Dana Terrace is always she always takes the story in surprising but satisfying directions.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Um,
Toon says that he wasn't huge on this episode just because he's not huge on King. I really like King. I know that King can be kind of a not as much of a favorite character as say some of the other characters. I really like King. I feel like King gets funnier if you have ever had a pet because he does like all these funny things that like your pet does. And like I really appreciate like the depth that they've given him as a character too, right? Like in season 1 he really was more of like just a comic relief character, and now he's got all this depth and like emotion to him, right? Like now we know that he's the last of his kind, and that can be really really heartbreaking for our characters, right?
I just love Alex Hirsch, and
And
anytime
Alex
Alex Hirsch
Hirsch, yeah, he freaking kills the
voices a
voice
character,
performance too.
Alex Hirsch is just great and fun, and I like him.
Yeah, he's great. He's
Yeah.
great. I love him.
This is like before we get into it, I just want to acknowledge. I don't know if you saw one of the screen caps that Dana Terrace posted on her Twitter was from the owlclub.net.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like she's pirating her own show.
Oh geez, gotta love it. Gotta love it.
I just think that's great.
Totally. Yeah. Zoe, definitely emotional damage this episode. I don't know if there would have been any obvious way to know that it was Titan's blood, but I don't know. We'll see how this goes. We'll see how this plays out.
I've been playing a lot of Hades, so Titan's blood means something very different to me.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to get answers as well, May. So we start off in this like sequence, right? Like as soon as this started, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh no, I'm ready for emotional pain," right? Because a lot of this in the beginning is very good, too good to be true, right? So obviously we're in a dream. King is making all this like food, this fancy cake. You got the apple blood jar like in the back here. Luz is dressed up in her Grom outfit. Even Ida's dressed up in her Grom outfit. She's wearing the suit. And then even Albert is wearing this little top hat. It's very cute, right? And then Hootie's even wearing a bow tie. Everyone's dressed up, right? And then we get these characters, right? These little tiny King lookalikes, right? With the mustache and the fedora, and then these little tiny babies who are super cute. Yeah, as soon as this guy popped up, I was like, okay, yeah, this is a dream. Yeah.
I'd said to you that the fact that King imagines his dad literally being the same size as him, just being him but with a hat and a stash, kind of says a lot about the fact he sees himself as like a fully developed individual already, which he isn't.
Yeah, but it goes to show, that's definitely like, one way to look at how King sees himself. Like, oh yeah, my dad is just like me, but like with a mustache. So yeah, he does kind of think of himself as like a full person already. So yeah, obviously King really doesn't know who he is either, right? But yeah, this was sad. This whole thing was like pretty sad. Where like, oh my demon family finally gets to meet my owl family. This is like a dream come true, right? Which is obviously very sad in hindsight, because all King really wanted was like a family, which is really sad.
It's not very poggers.
Not very poggers. Not poggers indeed. Of course, Ida. I don't know why the subtitles aren't coming up for. Oh, I clicked the. Okay, subtitles aren't working, but whatever. Oh, there we go. It's almost like a dream, right? And then King, of course, gets woken up by Ida from the dream, and it's quite heartbreaking because obviously we know that King has been like desiring something about his family for a very long time, and obviously this episode we're finally touching back on that plot point. So getting this intro with this like dream sequence to kind of get into King's head of like, okay, how does he feel about all this? I really appreciated that kind of like setup for this episode, so I thought that was cool. But of course, we find out that Luz is finally willing to talk. I imagine this to be kind of like the day after, right? Like maybe Luz needed like to process and be traumatized over the night, and and then finally decided the next day to open up to Ida and King. At least that's kind of how I saw the timeline of events, especially since things are moving rather quickly right now, right? We find out that the Day of Unity is coming up in about a week. I know that a lot of people were somewhat disappointed that we didn't get a follow-up to Hunter in this episode. I think it would have been nice to at least get a line like, oh man, he ran off or whatever. But I think it makes sense why we didn't get a follow-up on him in this episode, right? There's
Hunter
a lot
is
going
dead.
on. Hunter's not dead. Stop that. Stop that.
Hunter's dead. He's dead. He died.
He's fine. He's fine.
Got lost in the woods, and he does not have the survival skills necessary, and he died of exposure. That's how that story concluded.
No, he's fine. He's fine. Sorry, I'm reading the chat right now. Oh yeah, Morgan, it does remind me of the illusion of the Glandis kids. The one kid who just was his dad but with a mustache. That's funny. Yeah, I forgot about that gag.
That's how it works. Those are the rules.
Yep.
Zoe is correct. All dads are a version of yourself with a mustache, especially me, who already has a full beard.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just me with a full beard and a mustache.
Yeah, your dad just looks like you, but with a beard and like with a mustache on top of the beard. Exactly.
On top of the beard, exactly. That's exactly it.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Yes, I totally agree too, and I'm glad that Ida gave Luz the time and space to talk about it. We love Mama Ida.
Seeing her cry in this episode is real miserable.
Oh, it was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, right? Okay, so we get the shortened intro. We have too much to cover to do an intro this week, right? And this is something I really love about this show as well, and something that we've actually seen the show do before, right? So as Luce is recounting the events of what she saw to Ida and King, right? We get this replay of this memory, right? And this flashback of the clips from the last episode, but the dialogue is actually slightly different. The dialogue from the Collector is different in this flashback than it was in the last episode. And I really like the way that the show does this because not only is it like a tool for us as the viewers to get like a more concise version of the events that happened in the last episode, but you know, I think like this just goes to show the way that Luce is remembering these events, right? Like we saw this happen with the scene with Camilla from yesterday's live where she was like misremembering what Camilla was telling her. And in this one too, she's misremembering what she heard from the Collector, right? So these lines, let's slash and rend and crush and bruise. Let's cruise the land with let's curse the land with 9 bright hues, right? So this is different from what the Collector said in the flashback that we saw in Hollow Mind, but this just goes to show the way that Luce is remembering it, right? Like she has very much internalized that the Collector is dangerous, right? Like this person is going to cause harm, is going to do damage to the Boiling Isles with the 9 bright hues, right? So the trapped beneath these bones didn't quite get registered for Luz. So I really love the way that the Owl House like utilizes memory and like flashbacks in this way. Yeah. Because it really does help to characterize Luz and like what she's thinking of, right?
Yeah, it's almost like a weird reversal of the unreliable narrator.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely is like a version of that, right? Like the way that Luce internalizes these memories is of course going to affect the way that she acts on them, right? So the way that she yeah, you get my point. I'm rambling at this point. Yeah, unlike the Camilla flashback, we don't really know what Luce is misremembering. Yeah, I think she's internalized that the Collector is like more dangerous, or not necessarily more dangerous than it actually is, but
he's assumed a lot more malicious intent.
Yes, definitely.
Than necessarily was confirmed.
Yes, and I have a lot of interesting thoughts about the Collector, especially after this episode. But we'll get to it when we get to it.
What does the Collector collect?
Right.
I think we all know the answer is Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Clearly, they've got a huge binder just full.
It's bold of you to assume there's only one.
Massive hordes of binders.
A huge binder. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh cards are expensive as hell. The Collector buys them off eBay.
Yeah, totally.
For like thousands of dollars per card, and that is an expensive hobby.
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to commit genocide, you know, to.
I mean,
fulfill that
sometimes, you know, to fund your hobbies, you got to do the side hustle. And sometimes that
Gotta do
side
this.
hustle
Is
involves
genocide.
a little bit of
Exactly.
genocide.
Exactly. And I think we can all sympathize with that. I think people should just leave the collector alone.
I really
you know?
hope no one takes this out of context. We're being sarcastic, people.
I don't care. Like, we're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Of course we're being sarcastic. Of course it's a joke. If people need me to tell them that this is a joke,
Exactly.
and they need to get their friggin' head checked.
Can we acknowledge how much Luz has improved in her drawing ability? I mean,
Yeah.
she's drawn out these flashbacks from Hollow Mind, right? And like, you know, trauma aside, Luz has come a long way in her art skills. Like these are actually really, really good. So yeah, shout out to Luz for practicing her drawing and you know,
You
doing
remember
these
that
portraits.
Horrifying drawing she did
Of Principal Bump? Yeah, she's come a long way. She's
horrifying nightmare.
But these look great. You know, she's really captured Philip Wintebane's assholeness and Bellows' evilness, I feel. So she explains to Ida, right, exactly what she saw in Bellows' mind, and she's like, this is a lot to take in, right? And Luce is like, we don't have time to take all this in, right? Like, we gotta stop him. He's evil. I fell for it, right? She's feeling really bad. She's feeling the guilt, right, from aiding Philip in his plans. And of course Ida's like, Hootie King, you guys know what to do, and they go in for the hug, which is really sweet. Yeah,
they are they're meant to be speed running taking down Bellows, but I don't think they're taking the speed run very seriously.
No, they're not.
They're not even trying to like glitch out of the map to skip entire sections of the plot.
I mean, they did kind of with the time pools, but now at this point,
That's what that was. That was them glitching out of the map. You're a genius. This is all a speed run. The outhouse is just loose speed running.
Oh my god!
using those speed run strats. See, if you glitch into the Emperor's Mind Palace, that means you can skip the whole Hunter slow burn redemption arc.
Right, exactly. You just get to skip over that chapter.
That cuts like 4 hours out of the game.
Yeah,
right there. Easy peasy.
Oh my gosh, you're silly. Yes, magical, exactly. Wholesome hug moment. We love it. We love our owl family. Lilith is back. She shows up. I love that Lilith comes back.
Yay.
We love
Does
Lilith.
A little bow.
Yeah, she shows up in her like in her rush state. We love her. She's like, I came as fast as I could. Albert told me everything, filled me in on the draining spell, right? Can't believe what the Day of Unity was the whole time, right? And of course, Lilith is doing exactly what Luz was doing too, right? I love that these characters, again, like parallel themselves in so many ways, right? Like, I was such a fool, I was such a dolt, such a chump. She's like got this self-pitying you know, lines that she has. And of course Ida is like, there's no time for all of this, right? Like, no pity parties. Luz is already upset as it is, and then we get this turnaround from Luz with her eyes all big and tears in her eyes. And of course it's played for laughs, but of course Luz is already blaming herself enough, and we don't need more of the pity to help us right now.
Yeah, that's not helping speedrunning at all.
No, it's not the pro gamer strats that they need.
It's not. They really just need to use the lightest armor possible, and they need to master that dodge roll, and they need to just speedrun the shit out of this.
Yes, Cool Aunt Lilith is here, absolutely. Some real speed, exactly. And I love this little interaction we get with Hootie and Lilith again too, right? Where, you know, they bow to each other, they're super cool, they're besties, right? And of course Hootie is so excited to see Lilith that he has to vomit up his innards, and he has some weird ghosts in there as well, and a grudge me ball, and a cricket bat, and all this random junk, right? Again, this is just my one tiny little nitpick with the Owl House, is that things happen for like plot convenience reasons, right? Like, oh yeah, they couldn't have discovered that King was a Titan before Luz knew about the collectors, so we have to hold off this letter, you know, where we'll put it in Hootie until it's ready to come out, right? So a little nitpick with the Owl House, but of course, I understand why they had to do it this way.
That's just a sentence I don't think either of us thought we
Let's
were going to
put the plot on hold by putting it in Hootie.
Let's put this thing inside of Hootie.
Oh my gosh. But it works. It works. You know, I can only complain about it so much.
Sometimes that's just what you got to do. It's not very friendly to the speed run, but to be fair, they didn't know they were speed running until like the last episode.
Exactly. It's not the crew's fault. It's Disney's fault, right?
It's like half a speed run.
Exactly. So, who do you gotta stop eating garbage from the ground, right? But of course, King finds the letter that we saw that mysterious character that somewhat looked like him drop off, right? And we finally get to follow up on this plot point, right? And we read the letter. There's this little rock thingy that falls out of the envelope as well, and the letter says, "King Clawthorn, if you wish to know who you truly are, come to this location to meet our warrior clan," right? And so I know that a lot of people were suspecting, like, oh yeah, King's race of demons is, you know, going extinct and they got their village somewhere else, right? This is a lot of things that people were speculating. And to get this kind of like twist was really awesome, I will say.
And it turns out they were all just a bunch of furries.
I mean, actually, though.
It turns out they were all literally just a bunch of furries.
Literally just a bunch of evil furries. I mean, I'm not going to generalize all furries as evil, but these furries were definitely
these furries were evil, yeah. I think the point when I realized they were... I didn't really think about the fact they were furries until one of the characters says, yeah, his tail looks really realistic. I'm like, oh, they're furries. They're not just people in costume, they're furries.
All right, exactly. Exactly. Key difference there. Of course, King says, you know, it's a good idea to go check it out because we can recruit them for our army to fight against Belos, right? We're getting a little bit of an Amphibia moment where we're recruiting people to fight against the tyrant, right? And of course, not to mention, it's a chance to learn more about King and find out where he came from. This is something that Luce told King that she would help him do, right? So we're ready to do this, right? And Luce, of course, we know that she tends to want to run away from her problems as well. So this is, of course, an opportunity for her to do something else while she's, you know, too busy being traumatized. And Ida, of course, takes this as an opportunity to send the kids away to go be safe while the adults take care of coming up with a plan to stop, you know, the bad stuff that's happening.
Gotta master that dodge roll.
And of course, Lilith says, right, like, I'm in favor of this plan, right? She thinks it is a good idea to send them off while they prepare for battle. These lines, you know, when you rewatch the episode, particularly hurt. You know, it wouldn't hurt to check. You know, judging by King's map, they'll be taken far away. They should be safe, right? And then, of course, Lilith also saying, like, oh, there was nothing of note over there, right? Which I think, you know, I think we could be assured that Lilith is obviously lacking in some information, right? Like if we remember back from the Elsewhere episode, Lilith herself was ready to like not really see anything, and then she was of course surprised when she saw all the cave paintings and the carvings and all that stuff. So yeah, it's clear that Lilith thinks she knows a lot, but she obviously has these missing pieces, right? That doesn't give her the full picture.
Yeah, and it's interesting just how the degree to which this episode completely recontextualizes everything we saw in that episode.
Exactly. I haven't gotten a chance yet to go back and rewatch that episode, but I've been meaning to because there's a lot I feel like in that episode that's gonna have new meaning now that we have this new knowledge, right? And especially I'm curious about that creepy stone guy, you know, that guy that attacked them but like was trying to protect King. Like, what was his deal? I would love to hear any theories that you guys have about who that gooey stone guy was in that previous episode, because yeah, we really didn't get any hints as to who he was in this one, but I'm curious if there are any theories out there.
Like a guardian of some kind.
Yeah, right, like some sort of protector of the Titans or something.
Like obviously, you know, obviously it became popular to hunt Titans,
right
and to cull their like it's they had a whole civilization, like they were intelligent and are intelligent beings, they're capable of cognizant speech.
Yeah.
So it's more than just like hunting, that's genocide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, maybe the stone guys were created to serve as protectors for the Titans.
I think, you know, the Collector, oh god, I feel like the Collector collects something, like collects souls or something, because the Collector...
yeah.
I keep thinking about the original comic book version of the Infinity War, which
Mm.
had a much more interesting thing to it, where it wasn't some hockamamie crap about bringing balance to the universe. It's literally just like Thanos wants to bone Death, um, who is a character in the MCU, and like wants to commit mass intergalactic genocide to give all these souls to Death, right? And
Mhm.
so if the collector is presenting themselves as a god to this group of furries, to this civilization of furries, which there are a few left, but presumably at one point they were prolific, and is also presenting themselves to Belos, and in both cases is basically engineering genocide. I'm just wondering if what they collect is souls, like plain and simple. They're just trying to collect souls.
Yeah, it's curious, right? So yeah, this episode definitely got me questioning like what is the collector up to? What is the motivations? Because there's some interesting parallels, right, between Bill, who we'll meet later on in this episode, and Bellows, right? There's a lot of interesting parallels between those two characters that I do want to get into.
And
So yeah.
if they had a romance, their ship name would be Billows.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Oh my god, that's Endgame. That's what the series is gearing up to.
That's Bellows and Bill learning the true meaning of love.
Exactly. And then they find each other and become better people with each other, right? They learn. Obviously, we're joking.
That's not the Infinity War comic. That's Infinity Gauntlet. I don't know what the difference is. I don't read these things.
I do want to read a couple things in the chat here. Robin has got me questioning what the heck Hootie's texture is like, whether he's feathery or furry. And the fact that we know more about what Hootie looks like on the inside than his outside is just an interesting thing to me.
All I can say is that Hootie is neither feathery nor fluffy or furry.
Right.
They are intangible, and you should not.
Nor smooth nor rough. They're their own texture.
Highly recommend you cease this line of inquiry before you discover some things about the world that you do not want to know. Hootie is not to be perceived by man.
Exactly. Other than curtsying for Lilith, right? I did love this little moment between Lilith and Hootie, where Lilith has like, oh, Hootzifer, brave Hootzifer will protect them, and Hootie being like, I will protect these silly children with my life, right? Like they're just really awesome. I love them.
I am absolutely going to do a redraw of the Lilith.
Yes, please do.
I just think it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, I love their friendship. It's the best.
Yeah, I was going to draw that today, but I drew a meme instead.
So Ida is like, how will they get there? And King is like, the Selkie Damas crew, right? We met them at the beginning of season 2. They could help us take us to that island. Allies would be great. I really want to take down Bellows, so we should go find these warriors, right? I wonder if I still have my sailor's hat. Of course, Ida, like, we could kind of see her anxiety and her stress come up, right, as this conversation is going on. And Hootie has this line where he's like, does anyone else feel that marching around the edge of the forest, right? Which, of course, is a little bit of a foreshadowing to the end of the episode, where we find out what exactly this marching is, right? So, of course, Bellows has, in fact, sent his army to go after everyone who's in the outhouse. So, like, a lot of people were putting the pieces together, right? Where, by the end of season 1, people were kind of like, why the heck would Bellows just let them go, right? Like, it doesn't really make sense. Why wouldn't he just like take them out while he has the chance to? But of course, in this season, we find out the time pools were an important piece, right, of Bellows coming to power, and there's been a lot of hints that he knew that was going to happen, that he recognized Luce, right, and there was that line from Tara, right, in one of the previous episodes too, where she was like, "Oh, the Emperor's looking forward to meeting you," right? So there was a lot of there's a lot of reason to believe that Bellows knew that Luce was going to have to go through the time pool. So now that has been completed, a lot of people have
there's no reason to keep them alive anymore.
Exactly, put it together that there's no reason, right, to let them be anymore. Now that they've kind of fulfilled his needs, so now the stakes are higher than ever, right? Like Bellows can now take these people out without any kind of repercussions.
So what you're saying is, Bellows is a big nerd.
Yeah. I mean, really, he is.
Zoe, saying if I didn't know Lilith is Aero Ace, I would be shipping them. Lilith and Hootie?
Let's not go there.
Is that a joke? Do you mean that?
Let's not
If
go.
so,
Let's not even go there. Let's not
please
even
go
go
to
there.
jail.
Hootie gets put into his little backpack, which I love to see. I love his little Hootie pack. It's great.
It's the fashion accessory of the season.
It really is. It really is. And then, you know, of course, Lilith is saying, you know, there's nothing out there, right? But of course, she has a lack of knowledge, right? We know this. We've seen this before, right? And as she's making her little pun, right, sending them on a wild loose chase, ha ha ha, right? She does her little dorky laugh. But of course, Ida is too stressed out, and she ends up breaking down and crying. And this is a really sweet but heartbreaking moment, right, where Lilith is like, oh no, my joke wasn't that bad, was it? And she's like trying to comfort her sister. And yeah,
I love these two. They're wonderful.
I love these two so much. I love the way that their relationship has like developed on the screen, right? Like getting to see like their friendship from kids to their falling out to their reconciliation, right? Like I just love these two and their relationship so much, and seeing them work together in this episode is really awesome. And you know, this is so much bigger than I imagined. Ida's saying, right? Obviously, she's worried about Rain. She's worried about Luz. She's worried about King. You know, now she's like, I thought Luz was just some lost kid, but now she's like tied up in all of this. And Ida's like blaming herself, right? And she's like, it's not fair. They're just children, and they shouldn't have to deal with this, right? And this hug from Lilith saying, like, don't worry, we'll figure it out. We have a whole week in which she's trying to assure is like a lot of time, but it's really not that much time. A whole week till the day of Unity. We'll figure it out, right? And
yeah,
of course,
when they put it like that, that's real. That's you know, honestly, if they're speedrunning, that's more than enough time. I've seen speedruns completed in like half an hour, so they could probably do this.
Yeah. Yeah, so they are resolute, right? They decide that they're gonna do it. Luz and King hop on the ship, and it turns out that most of the crew, since they were working for the Golden Guard and decided they don't want to work for the Golden Guard anymore, really only this one guy, Salty, is still here to help them out. The rest of them have unfortunately left, which you know,
is supportive though.
Yeah, we love him, we love Salty, but we kind of saw this in the last episode too, right, where like most of the witches who maybe would have been more okay with rebelling are now suddenly falling into line, right? There's fewer of these rebellious witches here, so shout out to Salty for still helping them out. He's a good dude.
Salty is an amazing NPC. Salty is gonna show up in the end fight and beat Bellows to death with his bare claws. And that's how it ends. That's my prediction.
Exactly. This was a fantastic bit between Ida and Lilith. Also really literally thought too hard about a possible theory where Ida worries about Luz's well-being. Luz is turning immediately too. Yeah, there's been a lot of theories that have popped up too with this episode. So I'm really loving everyone's theories. It's super fun.
Yeah, it's not out of character for Ida to try and put Luz out of harm's way, because that's functionally what she did. I don't know. It's hard to say at this point what will become of that if that is the direction they go in. I don't want to feel like our time is being wasted, especially when we have so little time left. So I don't know if I don't know what they could do at this point in the story. Like, I don't know. I've heard some people say, "Oh, what if, you know, now that we know that that King has Titan's blood because he's a Titan,
right?
You know, are they gonna send Luz home, and then Luz is gonna have to try and find a way back? You know,
right?
We've kind of already seen that with Amphibia, so I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, so
I just don't know. Like, but like that's obviously kind of that line of thinking is what Ida did at the end of season 1,
right?
With, all that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if something akin to that, something along those lines,
right,
were to happen.
Right. Yeah, totally. I feel like this. I wouldn't want to waste our time either. But yeah, I do hope that all of our characters sort of get on the same page soon, right? Like Rain is trying to protect Ida right now. Ida is trying to protect Luz right now, and Luz and King right now. So it's like, I wish
what
everyone...
they really need to do is just be on the same page.
They just all need to come together and work together to come up with a plan. Like, that's really just what needs to happen here. So hopefully they don't waste too much time in getting us there, because I really want us to get to the point where we're all working together already.
Yeah.
So King and Luz show up to this island, right? There's like a finger sticking up out of it, right? And Luz has this line where she's like, "That doesn't look like it's from our Titan." And we've kind of already known this, but we're getting it kind of spelled out for us in this episode, right? The fact that the Boiling Isles is the remains of one singular Titan, and that there are multiple of these Titan corpses, you know, across the world, right, across this boiling ocean, and there's like different of these Titan parts that are like creating these islands, right? So this is part of a different Titan, this is part of a different beastie, right? So yeah, we're getting a lot of info about the Titans in this episode, and I think like a lot of it is going to come back into play in some way, right?
Yeah, it makes me wonder what the landscape looked like what the geography of this realm was before the Titans died and provided them with land to live on.
Yeah, exactly. It's
if
interesting.
It was like smaller islands but mostly seabound. I don't know, it's hard to, who knows? Yeah, maybe the ocean levels rose.
I wonder. Yeah, maybe the atmosphere got too hot. Yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of hints as to, you know, what could have the original Boiling Isles been like. I feel like that origin story is something that we're gonna kind of get at some point. Maybe not like exactly spelled out, but you know, that we've gotten the revised version of the history multiple times. So I feel like it's kind of setting us up to get the truth at some point, right? So they end up finding this island, and they're like, oh, what if they're not here? What if they left? But of course, Luz recognizes that this is like a key in a lock, right? And she sticks the little rock into the formation, and then we see this like circle magic come out. And this is actually very similar, right? Like the colors that come out of this like blast are like the blue and the yellow and orange that come out, and they're very similar to the power that we saw King use before, right? The knocking on Hootie's door power. So I'm curious whether this is some sort of Titan magic, right? I mean, obviously, like it uses the Titan remains to power this thing, right? You know, when they destroy it at the end, it like cuts it off. So yeah, I'm curious if this is some sort of Titan related magic, right? And this rock isn't just a rock, right? It would have been a bone, a piece of the bone from this like Titan finger, right? And we know that the Titan has magic in its body because that's how the glyphs work, right? So yeah, I'm curious as to whether this is like some sort of Titan magic.
Does King have a bile sac?
Right? We don't know. We don't really know what the anatomy of King or the Titans is like, right?
We're just gonna have to cleave him in twain.
No.
Why do you hate the truth?
So they end up getting like kind of UFO lifted, right, like into the air and transported into this other like landing pad, right? It's clear that the travel between these realms or these regions, right, whether they are doing it now very often, but it's clear that this infrastructure has been set up, right, to travel in between these two islands, which is just curious to me. There's a lot of questions I have from this episode that obviously we don't get answers to, but I'm curious if we will get answers in the future, right? So yeah, is travel between these like different corpses, right? Was it more common at one point? Because we know that the character that dropped off the letter was able to travel with relative ease, right?
Yeah, it kind of like, is this some kind of magic that is inherent to the body of the Titan? Like, are they somehow still able to use magic even though they're a corpse?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just interesting, and the idea of it being specific to the finger, which is obviously, you know, the mode through which people draw the spell circles, and I don't know.
There's a lot of interesting connections there. I did want to pause here because this is just interesting to me. So we see this kind of new landscape, right? It's obviously very different from the Titan that we have seen on the Boiling Isles, but we see this skull, we see these bones, and this looked very similar to me and looked familiar to me. If y'all remember from Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door, when we went into Ida's dream sequence and we saw the Owl Beast and we saw this hooded figure with a moon on their face being blocked out, who we now are suspecting is the Collector, or in some ways related to the Collector. So there's something going on, right, between the Collector, the Owl Beast, this other region of the Boiling Isles, right? There's something connected there, but we don't quite know what it is yet.
My theory is none of the Titans are dead. They're just really, really lazy.
They're just taking a nap.
And they're just like lying around. Like this Titan is doing a spell for them, setting them up. It's like, yeah, I'm taking a nap, but like I'll blast you up into the sky, like if you need me to. Like,
right.
I don't mind.
Right.
I got you, fam. But they're just otherwise they're just incredibly lazy. They don't move.
Yeah, they just chill around. Hootie says, we're not in Kansas anymore, and then the big character shows up, right, and is like, how dare you trespass, but of course recognizes King, right, and it's like, oh no, by the huntsman. And this is an interesting line too, right? He says, by the huntsman, it's King, right? And we've heard characters on the Boiling Isles say stuff like, oh, Titan and stuff like that before, right? And they use Titan as kind of a replacement for the word God in this way. And it's interesting that this character in this region, right, tends to not say Titan, but they say huntsman, right? Because we know that they worship the Collector, aka this huntsman, as their god. So I just thought that was interesting. So his name is Tarek. Hail and well met, he says, which I thought was just kind of funny, right? They all kind of talk very very silly, like thither and tis king, right? Which is really just amusing to me.
I think more people should say thither.
Right? Yeah, totally. And then King this is sweet, right? He introduces Luce and Hootie. This is Luce, the human / friend / sister, which is just very sweet, very wholesome.
And this is Hootie, the ... door.
The door? Question mark? Yeah, which is accurate. He is a door. King asks, like, are you my father? And Tarek is like, no, nor is he not here, but I did send the letter, right? So this is interesting, right? So obviously King, his kind of emotional journey throughout this episode is like, trying to find his family, trying to find his father, feeling abandoned by his family and father, right? So obviously he's disappointed to hear that his father isn't here, but it is also interesting getting Tarek and his logic, right? Like, he saw this video from Little King, and then he decided to send this letter based off of the assumption that, oh, this kid is got this Titan skull, right? So he must be a Titan hunter. He must be one of us. I don't know who his father is, but just based off of the appearance of this kid, I know that his father must be related to us. And he like, Tarek has this line here, right, where he says, like, he passed down that handsome skull of yours, didn't he, right? And of course, on first viewing, we don't actually know the implications of this line, but of course, as we rewatch the episode, we know that he means he physically passed down the skull as like an heirloom, is what Tarek is assuming the skull to be. But of course, King is assuming this to just be like, oh, he passed down your good looks, right? And this really blew my mind as I watched the episode over. I was like, wow, I can't believe they just like hinted at this. It was really well done.
He has yet to realize that they are in fact furry larpers.
Exactly. And as soon as he said, like, Titan Trapper Island, my red flags were going up. I was like, oh boy, Titan Trapper doesn't sound good to me, right? This whole thing was just like, it got me suspicious from the beginning, The last episode was way too harrowing for us to just have a fun romp this episode. I was suspicious from the start. I don't know about y'all, but I was definitely getting bad vibes right from the beginning.
Feel like if they were like, welcome to Murder Nazi Island. It's like, oh, it's the interesting name you went with there.
Exactly.
Interesting. Is that a reference to something, or is that how is that spelled?
Yeah, they're like, welcome to Adolf Island, right?
Yeah, Adolf Island. It's like, oh, that's an interesting name. Yeah, I haven't heard that one in a while.
Interesting name you chose there.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm crying. Okay, we have to stop this. So we are Titan trappers, he says, right? So they're sworn to protect the world from giant monsters of death and destruction, right? So they've got this idea of what the Titan is, right? And obviously we kind of get this implication at the end that all of this is not necessarily true, right? We know that Bill was really selfishly motivated in doing all this, right? And he did lie to his people about the true motivations and the true reasons that he was really doing this, right? So I just thought that whole parallel with Bellows was interesting. But yeah, we'll get to that, right? So none of them have really seen a live one, right? Many of us have not seen a live Titan. So the timeline exactly of, like, you know, Titans when they were alive, when King was in his egg, how long was he in the egg for, all of that stuff we really don't know, right? But it's clear that Titans have a very long lifespan, right? So it doesn't stand to how do I say this? It wouldn't surprise me if King was in the egg for like a really long time, right? Like, let's say even hundreds of years, kind of a long
hundreds
time.
of years, yeah, because they're clearly capable of living for an unfathomable, you know, long enough where any idea of what they were as a species has long since disappeared into speculation.
Right. Yeah, it looks like Zoe was suspicious. May was suspicious. Thiz was not finding out until way late.
Wait, I looked up it. According to the video I looked up, it's pronounced Tige. Please tell us if that is how. Yeah, please tell us if that is correct.
Yeah, let us know.
That's not correct. I'll find another source, but I think I did a little research.
Yeah. May was also suspicious. Hyrule says that the Titan kind of looks like the Leviathan skeletons. Yeah, I could totally see that. I think like this Leviathan creature, right, is kind of something that has inspired a lot of the Boiling Isles. So we walk into this building, right, and we see this giant Titan skeleton with like these like planets all around, right, and we think that it's like some sort of impressive structure. The Grand Huntsman says that one remains, right? So so the Collector, the Grand Huntsman, the Huntsman is the Collector, right? So the Collector says that there is one Titan that remains, and of course we know that to be King.
It's better, but very wrong. Okay, back to the drawing board. I will find out how to pronounce this name. It's my mission.
Yes. So they tell King that he could be a Titan trapper, and King is like, what, right? And of course, at first, Luz is like, oh, that's amazing, right? Without really knowing what it could mean, right? And of course, Luz is like, we don't have any Titans, but we could still use your help. And it's a lot to explain right now, but we've got this evil Bellows here, right? And this one character is like, oh yeah, any enemy of yours is an enemy of ours. And again, I was just kind of like, this is too convenient. This is too good to be true. Like, there's no way that it's just going to be that easy, right? And of course, Tarek is like, we cannot make any promises, but you can go check in with our wisest hunter of them all. His name is Bill, right? And this I thought was kind of a funny little gag, right, where Luz is like, is that a short for something? It's like, no, just Bill. He's so cool though, right? He met our god and all this stuff. So
one of those people who's too cool for a surname, like Zendaya.
Or it's like, Madonna.
Who do you think you are? No one's too cool for a surname.
Right.
Is it pronounced Tice?
I'm Kendra, no last name.
Is it pronounced Tice? I looked up another one. We're being told to use Google Translate, and it will speak it correctly. I'm trying my best.
We're doing our best. Thank you for being patient with us. Have we really been pronouncing Zoe wrong this whole time, or are you joking with us? So it's interesting to me as well that Tarek has like this reverence for Bill, right? Like, oh, he's so cool. He's like got to talk with the Grand Huntsman. He's my best friend too, right? So like this. Like, it's clear that Bill has this kind of like manipulative like he is very manipulative with his people, right? And he's able to get the people of Titan Trapper Island to do what he wants based off of this, like, you know, oh, I'm this like grand wise huntsman. You gotta listen to me because like I'm so wise and great and I can talk to our god and all that stuff, right? Which sounds familiar. Sounds familiar, right?
He's an asshole.
He is an asshole. And he's my best friend, no big deal, right? I do feel like Tarek is going to come around at some point.
Tarek is the Steve of
right?
this
He's like
group.
the Steve, yeah. And he
Yeah.
actually does seem to like care about King, right? Or at least see King as like this kid, right? To some extent at least. So King, you know, he's having fun. He's got this pointy new weapon made out of Titan bones, mostly paper mache and bone, right? Just it's heartbreaking to rewatch this, right? Because like he's so happy, he's so hopeful, he's so just like ready to be like part of this family, part of this community, and he wants to like learn about his people, and of course to find out later that it's all a lie is like quite heartbreaking, right?
Yeah. He's carrying one of his ancestors' corpses in his hand.
Let's not think too much about it. And even at this point too, I was like, oh boy, this is a bad idea. We're splitting up way too much. We're split up from Ida, and now Luz and King are splitting up. This is bad news all around, right? I don't trust this. I don't trust this at all. So yeah, Luz tells King that he can go learn to be a Titan Trapper. And even King has this line where he says, this is a dream come true. And I was just like, oh buddy, this is gonna go bad in such a bad way. I just know it.
That awkward moment when you think you found your family, but actually they're just a bunch of furry larpers.
They're just a furry larpers
for genocide.
who actually want to kill you, who actually want you dead.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I was very surprised when they actually murdered King at the end of this episode. It was really I feel like Dana, I don't know how Dana got that past the censors. It felt, you know, very violent and explicit.
No joke though, there's a lot of dark stuff in this episode. But actually, okay, so here was another hint that I kind of missed the first time around that I didn't catch. But King, you know, he's bonding with his people, right? And he's doing this piñata and he's like trying to kill this Titan. This piñata looks like King, does it not? Like the head.
Yeah, and he's not even thinking about it.
He doesn't even think about it, but it looks like him. And interestingly, this thing has wings, so I'm curious if King is gonna get some wings one day.
Become Harpy King.
Yeah, right?
Having seen what the internet did with Harpy Ida, I don't want to think about what the internet's going to do with Harpy King.
Oh my goodness.
The internet's a bad place.
But yeah. So, you know, King is playing, you know, with his family, his fake family, right? He's trying to learn their ways, their Titan Trapper ways, and they're all super psyched, they're all happy, right? And we see King use his like sound blowy powers once again, right? Which is interesting, and he ends up like taking down this you know, griffin, and yeah, he's just like having a grand old time with these people, thinking that he's finally found his family. And again, like rewatching this, it's quite heartbreaking to see how this all goes downhill from here, right?
I've been like scratching my chin over this bit particularly because obviously none of the rest of them have the screamy voice power,
right?
And yet they are not at all surprised by the fact that King has the screamy voice power.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of makes me wonder what that thing does, and like is that actually an actual weapon where it projects the voice into like an actual, you know, something that can do damage.
It could be
which kind of makes me wonder. I don't know if have you seen Jurassic Park?
I have, but like a million years ago, so I don't really remember.
There's, you know, in Jurassic Park they have a replica of the Velociraptor's like throat region where if they breathe through it, it can emulate the sound. Kind of made me wonder if it's something like that, where they just maybe
maybe like
a part of the Titan, like a part they've actually extracted a physical part of the Titan, and it allows them to emulate. That ability.
That actually is a good theory. About. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, some sort of bardic magic. Yeah, exactly. Zoe and May. D&D rule: never split the party. That's how you know it's gonna go bad because they keep splitting the party too much. So yeah, Luce walks into Bill's office, right, and she sees all these weapons, and yeah, they start like disintegrating and falling apart as she's like picking them up. So it's clear.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah, it's clear, right, that this whole thing is quite a sham, right? It's clear that there's some level of fooling going on here. Charlatanism. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Exactly. Don't look too hard at the man behind the curtain, right? Like that sort of deal. So Bill is sitting here. He's reading this book, right? And it's titled "The Last Titan: A Study of the Boiling Isles." And interestingly, it's written by Flora Desplora, who we met in a previous episode, who was like the Emperor's Coven, like Lilith's mentor, who like was trying to show off to her and stuff like that. So interesting that she's like the head of like the historical whatever, right? So so it's interesting that this is her book, right? Obviously, we know that she has quite a revisionist version of history. We don't know how much she's complicit in the revising of the Boiling Isles history versus like how much she's just sort of like taking from Belos and like running with it, right? So that's sort of an interesting question that I have too.
Flora Desplora, more like Flora Deplorable.
Got him.
Got him.
So Luce is trying to talk to Bill, right? And he's like this grumpy old man who has a hard time hearing, and Luce is like trying to be all formal, right? Like, oh, we this lowly traveler begs an audience with the great Bill, and Bill is kind of just like, oh gosh, these losers, right? Like, oh, Tarek sent you, didn't he? Yeah, Luce is like, oh yeah, he mentioned he's your friend, and he says hi, and Tarek's like, oh yeah, of course he did. So it's clear, right, like in this scene as well, that that Bill doesn't actually really care about his people, right? Like, oh yeah, he says he's my friend, but whatever. But Tarek obviously holds Bill in very high regard, right? So the way that these two characters see their relationship and how different they perceive their relationship, I think will be important in the future. So Luz asked, if you could help us with Belos, blah blah blah, whatever. And yeah, it's interesting where Bill is like, oh, the upstart on the Carcass Kingdom, right? So he doesn't. He considers the Boiling Isles this other country essentially, right? Like, oh, that whole like rebellion, like, oh yeah, that's that whole like upstart, that whole whatchamacallit, like, oh, he's no big deal, right? So it's interesting how separated they are, and I'm curious if Belos is aware of this society. We know that this society is aware of Belos, right? So like, is Belos also wanting to coven these guys up and like kill them with a draining spell, right? Like a lot of questions I have. A lot of questions.
Is Belos a big nerd?
Is Belos? I think that we can confirm. That I think we can say for sure.
Is Belos a dork ass loser?
Yes.
Belos, more like Smellos.
But got him. But also an interesting line that we get from Bill here too, right? Like, I've got battle scars older than his reign as emperor. So these guys have been here for over 50 years at least, right? So at least a long time, right? And then he lifts up his shirt and we see the scar, and it's funny and whatever and gross, right? But yeah, the timeline of these things is interesting, right? And when exactly these guys were here, when were they killing Titans? How long have the Titans been dead, right? Like, there's a lot of interesting questions that I have from what gets revealed in this episode.
Indeed. I've seen people like putting timelines together to try and sort of piece it together.
Yeah. And so this scene, I really got to give it up to the writers for this reveal, because this scene, I literally, like, my brain was like, the gears were turning. If you like x-rayed my brain, you could see the little hamster in my brain, like the wheel spinning as these lines were going on. Because I was suspicious this whole episode, right? I was like, there's something going on here. There's something that I'm missing. There's some piece of information that like is gonna recontextualize this whole thing. And so like, as Bill was saying these lines, the gears were literally turning in my head, and I was piecing it together as he was saying it. like almost exactly in real time as Luz was like doing this as well, right? So they're looking down at King as he's like, hanging out with the rest of the Titan trappers, and Bill is talking about Titans, right? Like, the thing you don't know about them, they got their ravenous appetites, their terrible cries, right? And then he says, like, even their babies act like little monarchs. And the gears were turning in my head. And I was like, wait a second, wait a second. And then he says, the last living Titan I saw it once before it disappeared, right? And then he, the hateful roar blew up my eardrums. And then he says, how did it go? Wah, right? And then Luz has this look and the gears were turning in my head. And I was like, wait a second, wait a second. And then of course, Luz is like piecing it together, right? Like they act like monarchs, they're always hungry, and they say "weh," and then as Bill points to this egg, the lost son of the Boying Islands, the Grand Huntsman cannot return to us until the lost son is found by someone worthy, right? So this poster with this egg, right? Obviously, this egg looks very similar to King's egg. And this is where, for me, like, the pieces were starting to fall into place, right? Like, oh gosh, King is a Titan. Oh gosh, these guys are looking for King, and he is the last Titan, right? But I do want to just, like, draw some attention to this poster again, right? Because we're getting a lot of this similar kind of imagery, right? So we talked in the last week's episode about how a lot of like the paintings in Belos's mindscape were very reminiscent of like religious imagery that we see in real life, right? And I feel like this poster is actually very similar to that, right? Like the Grand Huntsman cannot return to its lost to his lost son, right? The lost son of the Boiling Isles, and then this like angelic kind of imagery around all of this. So I find it interesting how all of this is very reminiscent of like modern day religion, or like real world religion, I should say.
Are you implying that Dana Terrace has some things to say about organized religion?
Yeah, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that this is a metaphor of some kind.
Potentially.
This was a kind of a fun little Hootie fake out that we get to, right? Where Hootie's like, Luz, follow me, and we think that Hootie is like putting the pieces together, but of course he's just like, oh no, I'm just trying to look for a souvenir, right? But as they go into this other room, we finally get a bunch more of these pieces that help us put this picture together, right? And it also recontextualizes a lot of the paintings that we saw in the previous King episode, right? In Elsewhere and Elsewhere, the cave paintings that we saw. Like I said, I really want to go back and rewatch that and try to figure out, what like the paintings that we saw in that area, right? Like, were those Titan trappers or were those baby Titans, right? Like it's unclear. I have to go back and rewatch that. But we get these murals, right, of the Titan trappers taking down these Titans, these giant monsters. And then we get, of course, the shots of like these skulls, the remains, right, of all these Titans that they've killed. And then, of course, the big reveal that the sun moon kind of shrine in the middle is, of course, to the huntsman. So the huntsman is, of course, somehow connected to the collector in some way, right? Or is the collector. But something that I think is particularly harrowing about all these skulls that are around this shrine is, I think like we've talked a little bit about how like it's implied through this episode that Titans live a really long time, that they start off really small and obviously grow to a very large size. So it's unclear how old a lot of these Titans were when they got killed by these hunters, and the fact that they're all relatively small though, right? Like they're not huge gargantuan things, right? Like these are all relatively like animal sized or human sized, at least in this room. So that like these Titans had to have been pretty young for
comparatively anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe they're not 8 years old the way that King is, but at least they're not like hundreds and hundreds of years old the way that like a full adult grown Titan is. And like obviously some of the Titans they've killed were huge and gigantic, as we can see from these murals. But the fact that there's so many of these like little ones is just kind of sad to think about.
Yeet.
But of course, Hootie is oblivious and silly as always, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm just looking for a souvenir for Lilith." And he picks up this like snow globe. But Luce is, her little hamster in her head is spinning, and she's putting the pieces together the way that I was. Luce is like, "Oh gosh, the collector kid is their god, right?" So, interesting that Luce is like figuring out this piece as well, right? So. Bill is like, "Oh, you found the shrine to the huntsman. Like it's my little project or whatever." And then he reveals here, right? Like, "Oh, do you like our disguises? Like, you got to look like a Titan, a trap one, right?" And this moment like really blew my mind. Like my jaw quite literally dropped when this thing happened, when he took off the glove and it's like, "Oh yeah, we gotta just look like a Titan." And I was just like, "Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, this is bad. This is really bad."
But
Abort mission, abort mission. Oh my gosh, yeah. And then he says, right, like, "I'll hunt it down, tear it limb from limb, and mount its head in pride as we release the huntsman." So yeah, it's interesting that these guys like want the huntsman, they want the collector to be pleased. We can finally go from being Titan trappers to Titan slayers, right? So it's interesting to me that the collector somehow, as part of the collector's plan, as part of the collector's like motivation, like he does want all the Titans dead, which is interesting to me. It's really unclear to me what exactly the collector wants at this point.
Genocide, like the link between obviously this and I said it before, this and Belos's plan is genocide. They got a thing for genocide.
Right. So Luce, right, and Hootie do finally figure it out, right? When Bill is like, "Oh, who made your buddy's costume, right? Who's this tailor?" And they're like, "Oh god, this is bad. This is very, very bad." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, this is super cool, but we got to go, bye." And Bill is like, "Oh, what about the thing with Bellows?" And Luce is like, "Oh, I'm sure it'll work itself out." And of course, this is suspicious, right? Of course, Bill is like, there's something weird going on here as well. And as he is raising his suspicions, he looks out at King and listens to King's "weh" and his cry and recognizes that immediately as being that of the Titan. So Bill does put it together and figures it out as well.
What if really they're just looking for Waluigi?
What if they're just looking for Waluigi going, "Wah"?
Is Waluigi
Waluigi a Titan?
What is Waluigi a Titan?
Guys,
not clickbait.
Guys, think about it. Could Waluigi be a Titan? He acts like a monarch. He says "wah." Come on, guys. Come on. It's been right in front of us this entire time. How have we not figured this out yet?
Not to say that I'm a genius.
I mean, you're pretty genius for putting those pieces together, I feel.
But I think I figured out the greatest conspiracy of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Waluigi is a Titan, confirmed.
Confirmed. This episode pretty much all but confirms it for us that Waluigi is a Titan. Oh god, could you imagine Waluigi being like Titan sized? Okay, I don't want to think about it anyway. Oh my gosh.
If you guys ever wanna have just like an out of body experience, I encourage that you go on YouTube and look up the Waluigi sounds. It's like 10 minutes of Waluigi sounds and play it at 0.5% speed or slower. And like that is one of the most surreal experiences you will ever have in your young life, and you can thank me later.
Who needs drugs when you could just do that?
Who needs drugs when you can have slowed down Waluigi noises?
Oh my goodness. Anyway, so this scene right here is, I guess, kind of what makes me have a little bit of hope for Tarek as a character. He does kind of have this like little bit of this like connection with King, right? King asks him about his collar, and Tarek is like, "I don't really know, but maybe we can find out together," right? Like Tarek is actually quite fatherly to King in a lot of ways, right? And even when King is like, "Oh, can we play catch?" This line from Tarek, right, is just like, "I'm just happy to see he passed down the skull," which again is a hint that they're passing down the remains of the Titan, right, and not just King's looks. And King being like, I know this is a little silly, but can we play catch? And Tarek being like, oh, go get the ball thither, right? But this is what makes me think that maybe Tarek will come around eventually. Maybe he'll pull a Steve and regret some of his choices, right?
Regret some of his life choices.
Because he does like kind of have this like kinship with King, right?
Kingship, if you will.
A kingship, if you will, exactly. And I will.
And I mean, if you say so.
Let's see. I think Waluigi is King's dad. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's totally it, May.
Confirmed.
Confirmed. Let's see. Chior says that the gears were grinding away for them too. Exactly. Yeah, so this crow phone ends up coming in and filling in the blanks for Tarek, right? And Bill is like, listen, that kid you're with, he's a Titan, right? Make sure he doesn't know. Get him to the ceremony, blah, 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 right? And we get this kind of like sinister change of what's the word I'm looking for?
I'm not helping you.
Change of...
I know the word you're looking for, but I'm
change
not helping
of... Not attitude, not resolution. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for? He's got a change of attitude. I don't know, He's noticeably different here, right? He says like it's time to celebrate your induction into the Titan Trappers, right? But it's clear that they are ready to ceremoniously kill him, right?
Classic.
So this is interesting, right? So they get King dressed up in all this garb, right? They put this like moon symbol on his head, and at first King's like, oh, you don't have to go out like this. We'll do something small, just family and friends kind of thing, right? Which again is just like sad because we know that King really just wants to find his family, right? Like find his people. And of course, Tarek is like, oh, but your presence is special to us. We can release the Grand Huntsman from his prison and be granted power and glory, right? So this is interesting, right? So it's really unclear to me at this point what the collector's motivations are, other than genocide, right? Other than just wanting to kill everybody, but like why? Is it really just that like the collector wants to kill everybody, or I think Morgan said in the chat, right? Like the collector says that they're trapped beneath the Titan's bones, but it's clearly not just the singular Titan, right? Obviously, if they can move between these different islands, it's not just the singular Titan that they're trapped in. So are they just trapped in the Boiling Isles? Like are they from a different world? Are they from a different realm and they're trying to get back? Are they trying to merge the realms, right? I know that was like kind of a theory that was going around. But what's interesting here as well is that this circle glass medallion thingy is exactly the same looking one that we saw Philip Woodabane find in the Time Pool episode. So my question, I have another question. Is this the same glass thingy that Philip found, or is there more than one, right? Can the collector be kind of summoned through these plates, or is this the same one? Did Philip lose his somehow and it ended up here, or did these guys just always have this,
I interpreted it as more than one.
That's kind of how I interpreted it too.
I interpreted it kind of like the Behelets in Berserk.
I don't know what that is.
Like, yeah, I was just about to explain.
Please explain. Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
About to explain where they're like they are these mystical artifacts through which these ancient gods / demons, no one knows, communicate with / sow the seeds of chaos into the world,
right?
And they end up in people's hands by through fate, right. And people use them to I don't know, I feel like there's some kind of exchange going on, isn't there? Like the collector
right.
isn't just getting people to do things. The collector is obviously sort of luring them in with promises of something or the other.
Right.
Which is kind of why I thought of the Behelets, where they are specifically things that can grant wishes, quote unquote.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting.
I'm not saying that this the collector grants wishes, but I feel like there's some kind of
some sort of deal being made,
There's some
right?
kind of deal being made. The collector is alluring them with promises of grandeur or glory or
Right,
power. I don't know.
exactly. And how honest
Weird,
is that, right? Like,
weirdly, with Bellows, I feel like Bellows isn't looking for anything specific.
right,
Bellows is just trying to hunt witches, and in
right,
that sense, their goals are actually aligned. But that's just like, I don't know. More could be revealed. We don't know
right,
at this
exactly,
point.
exactly. Yeah, so what is Tarek gonna do down the road? That's a good question too. My headcanon is they're from another world. Yeah, fly, totally. I think like a lot of people have theorized that the collector could actually even be from like the in-between world, right? Like we saw in yesterday's lie. I saw that that was a really cool theory that someone had. So that could definitely be possible. Um, maybe yeah, too, maybe the Titan itself gave up its life to hold the collector captive, and that's why the collector
It's
needs to take
like
out the Titans. I don't, yeah, that's a good theory too. I don't really know how exactly this ties in, right? um but
it's
yeah,
like
so
the opposite of Ant-Man shrinking and going inside Thanos' butthole. It's like the opposite of that. Like the
oh my
Titan
god.
willingly took the collector up inside its chuff
Yeah, oh
and
my god, oh
trapped
my
it there.
god, stop, you're gross.
Why do you fear the truth so much?
But anyway, but I think what you said is right, exactly, Tom. Like the collector does seem to be promising something, but it's unclear how much of it is manipulation on Belos's end, right? So from here, it's clear that there's some sort of lies and manipulation going on, right? So the huntsman telling Bill that like, oh, I'll give you power and glory, and then Bill telling the rest of his people, right? Like, oh, the huntsman's gonna give all of us power and glory. But of course, we know that's a lie. So is what the collector told Bill also a lie? Is what the collector telling Bellows also a lie? Or did like the collector look at Bill and is like, oh, you're an idiot, I'm gonna manipulate you, and like look to Bellows and be like, oh wait, you're actually not that stupid, but like our goals are aligned anyway, so like let's work together. Like, is that the kind of relationship they have? Like, these are all the questions I have, these are all the theories I'm coming up with. And I know a lot of people are coming up with great theories about the collector, and I love reading them, and I'm so curious to know how this is going to play out. I know there's a popular theory as well with Luce getting possessed by the collector. A lot of people think that the little teaser fan art that Dana did of like that blue and orange character is Luce possessed as a collector. I personally don't quite buy that yet. I feel like that character doesn't look enough like Luce, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I don't
Uh,
think that. I think people are dramatically simplifying what loose looks like in order to
yeah,
get that to work. I don't know if that's because people truly don't actually understand the shape language of how loose is drawn, but I don't
yeah,
think that drawing looks like loose. I just
yeah.
don't.
I don't think that
But
drawing
like
looks like Luce.
judging by that, like the face painting we see after they take
Right.
the masks off, they take the skulls off. That face painting is obviously very very different, very similar.
Right. Yeah. So anyway,
Um,
but yeah, I don't want to throw out the Luce is gonna get possessed by the collector theory, because like there have been wilder theories in the show that have come true. I was skeptical to the Philip is Bellows theory at the beginning, but obviously that one ended up
I
being true.
I do not know how you were skeptical to that when it was so obvious.
I was skeptical of it to until a certain point, right? Like there were some people who, as soon as Philip Whittabane's journal came into play, they were saying that Philip was Bellows, and I was skeptical of it at that point. But as soon as
And
more information,
let the record show, I was one of those people who was saying this is Bellows
yeah,
at
you
that
were
point,
definitely on the
and
Bellows
you
truther.
called me a fool, and you
But
called
yeah,
me a con man
but that's what
and a
I'm saying with this
charlatan.
too, right? Like I'm saying, like I am skeptical of the Luce is gonna get possessed theory, but who knows, right? Who knows if this is gonna happen later on down the line. Um,
Indeed. I don't know if I'd be personally satisfied with it. I'm kind of tired of the main character gets possessed
by the villain.
by the villain thing. I'm kind of tired of that. It would be a little trite for my tastes, which is why I hope they don't do it. But they have avoided doing the trite option in the Owl House thus far. I just feel like
Yeah,
Dana Terrace is savvier than that,
yeah,
personally.
yeah, yeah. I feel like if they do some kind of possession thing, that at least it'll be in somewhat of a unique way. The show has always done a really good job of like subversing tropes as well. So yeah, we'll see how it
Did
plays
you just
out.
did you just say subversing?
What's the right word? Subverting. That's
Subverting.
subverting tropes.
You're a writing major.
Also, Morgan did thankfully give me the word demeanor earlier. Yes, that was the word I was looking for. Thank you. I'm not on my A game today, guys. So anyway, this was an interesting bit, right? So this
I was going to say disposition. The word I was going to
disposition is also the right word. Yeah. Thank you all for helping me out. Anyway, so this is an interesting thing that happens here, right? That I think is going to have some major consequences, but how exactly it's going to have consequences, I don't know yet, right? So King lights this little glass thingy aflame, and there's like this blue flame with these stars that come out of it, and then we hear the laugh, right? We hear the collector's laugh as like King's eyes start to glow, and he's like, "Did you hear that?" And then Tarek says, "The connection has been made," right? So like, what the hell does this mean? What kind of connection is possibly made between King and the collector now, or like the collector and like these people, right? Like there's so many questions I have. Like, what the hell is going on, basically, is my big question. What is happening?
This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife.
Oh my god. And then this line fucking broke my heart, you know, when they're doing this ceremony and Bill is like holding the knife up and ready to take out King. King is just like,
King says the classic line, it's so sad that Steve Jobs died of ligma.
Stop.
and then the guy's like, who's Steve Jobs? Who's Steve Jobs? And then King is like, ligma balls.
Ligma balls.
And then he floats, and yeah, that was really, it was emotional, frankly.
It was emotional.
Really,
it surprised me.
I cried.
I
don't know about you, but I cried at that moment.
Oh my god.
It is so sad that Steve Jobs died of ligma.
I hate you so much. Let the record show.
I'm not here to contribute anything meaningful. I'm here to meme and leave.
You're here to be a freaking troll.
I resent that.
But no, this line from King, right, that we get to play catch, right, it was very heartbreaking. It got me in my kokoro. It hit me. It was hard.
So sad.
So sad, right? But of course, Luce is there to save the day. You know, he's like, I can't move because she's obviously invisible and holding him back. Something that you actually noticed that I totally missed when I first watched that episode is this knife, this dagger that King is being threatened with.
Yeah, it's the same dagger.
It's the same.
Bellows used to beef jerky his brother.
Yeah, it's the same knife he used to attack his brother. Yeah, to beef jerky him, as he said. But yeah, it really has me thinking, right? So we did have some theories last week about this knife potentially being like a ceremonial knife, some kind of ritual knife of some kind, right? And so this
here, it's explicitly being used to summon the collector, which made me wonder. What I said to you was, what if him killing his brother was more than just killing his brother over it? Clearly there was some kind of disagreement, like we know that.
Right, exactly.
What if accidentally or otherwise that was how he first came into contact with the collector at all?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know.
Yeah, and again, like the timeline is unclear, right? Like there's been a lot of piecing together of all the portraits that were in the last episode, right? And I know that we definitely talked about it a good amount, and I feel like we covered a lot, but obviously there was no way that we were going to get under 100% of what the story was in the short time frame that we had. But a lot of people have actually come up with this timeline that I really like, which was, you know, Philip and his brother were on Earth. Philip's brother left Earth to go to the Boiling Isles, and maybe that's why Philip felt abandoned by his brother, and maybe they were actually separate for a long time. And then when Philip discovered the Boiling Isles, he found his brother, and he was like, oh, this is where you went. And as you were gone, you went and, like, you know, knocked up a witch, and now I hate you and hate your guts and hate all witches, right?
That is exactly how the dialogue is going to go down when you see that scene. It's, oh, you knocked up this witch, and now I hate you.
Exactly.
This is not my beautiful wife.
But I did really like that timeline, right, of Bellos like finding the Boiling Isles and finding his brother and discovering this kind of like later on, right? So it's unclear when and so like did he find the collector before he killed his brother, right? Like these are questions about the timeline that I hope that we get answers to later, right? Like did he specifically kill his brother as like a potential way to connect with the collector, right? Like I know that a lot of people were in the time pool episode when Philip says that line where he's like, "Oh, I might require a sacrifice eventually, one day or another," right? A lot of people were thinking like, "Oh, he's talking about Hunter, or he's talking about like, his Grimwalkers or whatever," right? And then we found out in Hollow Mind that like, no, the Golden Guard was really kind of just more his pawn, right? Like more so for him to almost like take out his revenge of like, oh, my brother betrayed me, so I'm gonna clone him and kill him over and over again, right?
He acts like such a friggin' incel.
He really does, right? So like in that episode, it was kind of implied to us that like the Golden Guard isn't necessarily like this big important sacrifice, but more so like just this piece for Bellows to continue to have control over, right? And to be able to like boss around and manipulate the way that he sees fit in order to accomplish his goals, right? But it's unclear to me whether or not now like Hunter slash his original brother was a sacrifice or not, right? And what the timeline exactly is on the collector and killing his brother, that part is still unclear and up in the air. So I'm curious to know if that'll come into play. But it is interesting, right, that this is the same knife. This is the same knife that Bellows used.
I guess you could say that Bellows is a big nerd.
I guess you could say that, absolutely. The collector gives you that knife once you talk to them. Yeah, right? Like maybe it's a collector related knife. And yeah, totally, Morgan. We're seeing a lot more parallels to Bellows here.
I'm just going to repeat what I said in the chat to that comment.
Yes.
That just makes the collector sound like an NPC in a video game. Like you rescue 10 of their chickens, and then they give you that knife as a reward.
Exactly. You find,
and that's how that interaction goes down.
You find their glass, circle medallion thingy, and you get the knife as a reward for that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's literally all the collector is. They're that friggin' weirdo. You won't know what this is, but people in the chat may know. That friggin' weirdo who starts like a Mythic Dawn museum in Dawnstar in Skyrim. That's all the collector is. They're not even that important. They're just some weirdo.
Oh my gosh.
They're just some big nerd.
So King, right, is of course kind of hurt about the fact that Luz took him away, and he's just like, they're my people. They know what it's like to be left behind. Of course, he's talking about how he's feeling about being abandoned by his dad, right? And of course we find out here that it's not just about his dad, right? And King is like, it's about you too, Luz, right? Like we know that Luz is eventually going to go back to the human realm. He's like, I know how it works. I read your Azura books, right? Like, oh, so heartbreaking. Then he even brings up the promise that Luz made in yesterday's live, right? Like, you even promised your mom, right? And we know how Luz feels about this promise, right?
Does he say he read her diary?
No, he says, I read the Azura books.
How does he know about the promise then?
Well, I think Luz told them about it.
Is that right?
I think so. I have to assume that.
For some reason, my brain is Mandela affecting me right now. Where for some reason I remembered it being like King had read her journal or something.
I think she just. I mean,
clearly that's not it. But
no, yeah.
That's just how my brain remembered it.
But yeah, I feel like Luz just told them. But yeah, King says this line, right? Like, I thought I had to prepare for a world without you in it, right? Which again is just particularly heartbreaking. We know that King we're finding out, right, that he has like these abandonment fears, and of course that's going to apply to Luz as well, right? Who he considers to be his sister at this point. It's just really heartbreaking. But of course, Luz tries to explain, right, that these people are not the answer. Like, these are not the people that are going to help you. And she does, in fact, spell it right out, right, that you are, in fact, a Titan, right? And these guys are Titan killers, and they are trying to kill you. Ugh, poor King.
Not a good day to be king.
Not a good day. Starting off with bad dreams, ending with just pain and heartbreak and
Bad
abandonment.
dreams, bad dreams, dank memes, and kidney beans.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what this episode. That was actually the original working title of this episode, but they couldn't figure out how to get the kidney beans
Oh my gosh.
kind
Yeah,
of fit into
right.
it, so they abandoned that idea after a little while.
So these guys are slinging spells, right, and weapons and all that stuff, and of course Hootie and Luz are fighting back, and they protect them. And Hootie has this fun line like, "Tell Lulu how brave I was." Um, and then Tarek, right, is here trying to like take them out. But King is like, "Stop fighting, and one of you guys," which is just really heartbreaking, right? And then the skull ends up coming off. And then this guy is like, "You were never one of us," right? And then it's the reveal of all their faces, right? And it's interesting. A new hunt begins today, right? So they take off all their skull helmets, right? And we get this reveal that they have like these face paint stars and suns and all this stuff, right? So obviously a lot of people have connected the dots and they see the character that Dana has drawn as like this sneak peek character. And I think, my theory with that character now that we got this reveal is that that character is a worshiper of
Yeah,
the.
that was my thought as well.
Yeah, like this person is a worshiper of the collector, and maybe this person is going to turn around and like join our side somehow and give us more information on the collector, because like, we get this hint here, right? Like the fact that Bill here says like, I shall ride cloaked in glory above all others, and all the rest of the people are like giving themselves these looks, right? Like what the hell is this guy saying? Did he just say I instead of we? And then Tarek confronts him on it, right? And he's like, "You mean we, right?" And of course Bill is like flustered for a second and is like, yeah, right? And I mean, even Hootie asks here, right? Like, are Titans even evil? Like, how much have you been making up, right? So I feel like these seeds have been planted in this population, right? To question Bill, question his
Yeah,
motives. So like, I think it would be interesting to see one of these characters, right? Like
yeah,
defect.
break away. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Can I
that's,
just bring up a tiny detail that's totally unimportant, but
yeah, go
I
ahead.
wanted to bring up that lady, one of these characters, her eye color is the same as King's original eye color, from the pilot.
Oh yeah. One of them has like the purple. Yeah, I think it's this one,
The
the
red,
pink.
it's like a
Yeah.
red, pinky red thingy.
Yeah. You're right. Totally.
Just wanted to bring that up. Totally unimportant, but
It's an interesting detail for sure.
no one has stopped me thus far, so
So yeah, like just interesting, right? So that's kind of my theory with who that character could be, especially after seeing like the face paint in this episode. I personally don't think that character is loose, possessed by the collector. But I might bite my tongue later if that ends up being true. So who knows?
you will actually physically bite your tongue.
I will bite it clean off.
Live on stream. It'll be like Werner Herzog eating his own shoe.
It'll be very gruesome. It'll get flagged for not safe for work.
But it'll be very successful and you'll make millions in
Yes,
ad
it'll
revenue.
be my most viewed stream. So they end up escaping, right? They run off and they go through this portal, and Hootie ends up helping them make it through safely. And then, of course, they decide that they need to destroy it. We see the kind of clan going after them, right? So they're trying to come through the portal, but King uses his sonic powers, right? His like Titan yelling powers to scream and destroy this thing. And we've seen him use this power before, but not really to this extent, right? Or not really to this magnitude. So this is really shows us, how powerful King can be, how powerful a Titan can be. And just imagine if this little babby Titan can destroy this thing with his wah. Like, just imagine how powerful the big Titan is gonna be. Oh my god, can we imagine the big Titan going "Wah" in like this big deep voice?
It's not going to be a big deep voice. It's Waluigi's voice.
It's gonna be Waluigi's voice coming out of the Titan.
About this. It's going to be Waluigi standing up with his lanky legs
in a deep reverberated "Wah."
No, have you never heard Waluigi? Waluigi does not have a deep voice just because they're big. doesn't mean they got a
It
deep
is. It
voice.
is going to be a big wet though.
No, no.
I didn't say deep. It's just big.
It is going to be big. It's gonna wee. So we'll
um.
hear the wee for miles and miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
A guy streamed eating his own shoe. No, it wasn't a stream. Werner Herzog made a bet with a guy once. I can't remember whether, I'll keep this short. I can't remember what the bet was. It was to do with finishing a film. I think it was a man was trying to make a documentary about a pet cemetery, and it went through development hell for a ridiculously long amount of time, like 20 years. And Werner Herzog, who is a German director, said, "If you ever release this film, I will eat my own shoe." And then eventually the film released, and Werner Herzog is basically not human, so he just video. You can find it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
He filmed himself in front of an audience eating his own shoe. So
that's very ridiculous. I will not be doing that, for the record.
You're welcome.
May, you had a comment that says King and Ida knew about it because she talks with Ida about it in. Oh! I think you're talking about the promise that Luz made to her mom. Is what you're referring to there, I think.
No. She's talking about Waluigi.
Oh yes, of course. How powerful Waluigi? Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
it's that one dialogue in Follies where Ida's like, "Man, Waluigi's so powerful."
Clearly,
and everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah."
Yeah, we're scared of him. We're scared of him.
We're terrified of Waluigi. Look at that mustache.
King ends up destroying the portal, and yeah, too. I am interested to know if this portal technology will come back later. I'm also curious to know if this kind of technology is related to the teleportation glyph that Philip Whittabane we saw him use, right? So maybe that it's some sort of related magic there. It wouldn't kind of surprise me if it was like the same spell, quote unquote. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. So King has again this heartbreaking line, right? Especially heartbreaking once we get to the end of the episode. He's got tears in his eyes and he holds on to Luce and says, "I want to go home," right? But of course he can't even go home at the end of the episode. The Owl House is no longer safe, right?
It's fine. They're a bunch of foot soldiers with finger guns, you know.
Yeah.
If Ida just uses her dodge roll, if she just uses her dodge roll, they can't touch her. It's going to be easy. Don't even worry about it.
You're very silly. So something I also have another question about, right? Because we finally got some attention drawn to King's collar. I've never actually questioned King's collar before. I never really thought to wonder what this thing was or like whether it was going to be relevant in some way. But this episode got me questioning it, right? Because we got that line from King and Tarek being like, "Oh, what is this? I don't know. Let's figure it out together," right? And now we get this shot of King looking down at his collar, right? Again, we know that he's contemplating his family, his past, his origins, and now that he knows what he is, right? He's like looking down at this collar, this symbol for like what he is, and there's a lot of questions I have about it, right? Like, what is this symbol? What does it mean? It looks very similar to some sort of glyph, some sort of spell, because it is circular. So I'm curious to know if this will be a spell that like activates something later on. But I don't know, right? Like I do think this is going to be important in some way, though, and I'm curious to know if any of y'all have any theories. If you do, let me know in the chat.
I truly have no idea.
Yeah, I really have no idea right now. I cannot even begin to speculate what King's collar could be.
I don't even know who I am anymore.
Yeah. And then we get this kind of somber look, right? As King is on the boat looking out at the remains of the Titan on the boiling isles, right? And he's recognizing this being as someone related to him, right? And he has this like very just somber high that he says, right? He's like trying to make this connection with this being that he's been living on, right, his entire life, but now has a new understanding of like what this is, who this is, and the fact that he is one of them, right?
Very awkward for King.
Awkward and also just sad and like heartbreaking. And yeah, I really do feel for King in this episode. I hope that he's able to come to some sort of reconciliation. I don't know what that's going to look like, though.
Yeah, that it is kind of, yeah, that shot at the end is kind of it is kind of sad. Just
Yeah.
that weird, like, that's maybe my dad.
Maybe my dad, maybe could be me in the future, right? Like who knows really what
And
sort
it's
of.
just a big corpse now.
Yeah, yeah. And also like the fact that they've been living on that corpse, right? Like for his whole life, and now he
Yeah.
knows that like this is my family, right?
That awkward moment when you've been living on a corpse your whole life.
And it's your dad.
And it's your dad, not clickbait.
Oh my god. So in the meantime, right, all these foot soldiers are here, hop, hop, hop. They've got their silly little finger guns pointing towards the owl house.
The finger guns really did make me laugh.
Yeah, it's a bit silly.
We're going to shoot you with our invisible guns.
And then we hear Kikimura's voice right on the phone, say, "Arrest everyone inside for the emperor, right?" And Toon, you're exactly right, that we don't actually see them come home. We don't actually see Ida and Lilith at this final shot here. And of course we know
they're speed running. They've
we
already
know
skipped this part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that Hootie's not here either, right? We know that Hootie's gone, so that they can't have any defenses. Yeah. So what is gonna happen at this point? My kind of prediction is that Ida and Lilith are not gonna be there. I'm hoping that they've teamed up with Rain, Darius, and Eberwolf at this point, and they have got their little rebellion team going on as well. But who really knows where they could have gone or what could happen at this point? But I do feel like there's gonna be some sort of like reversal to this cliffhanger that is going to surprise us in some way. I don't think Ida and Lilith are going to be caught so easily, in my opinion. But I'm curious to know what you guys think is going to happen.
I think Ida's gonna come out with a Glock.
I don't know if you saw the preview for Amphibia, but they did give Lady Olivia a gun in a future episode, so I'm excited to see that.
They did what? Sorry, you cut out for a second.
In an Amphibia promo, it showed that they did give Lady Olivia a gun, so I'm excited to at least see that.
I don't even know how to process that information.
Some folks are saying that Ida and Lilith aren't home. Gabriel says that we're creating hype for the next episode. Yeah, definitely. I think we're trying to increase the tension for sure.
Ida and Lilith aren't home sounds like an A24 Pictures indie movie.
Coming out to Hallmark this holiday season.
What do you mean Hallmark?
I don't know. I don't know what A24 is.
A24 Pictures. They make indie. I just said indie movies. They make indie movies. They did like what did they do? Did they do like The Killing of the Sacred Deer? No.
Anyway, May has a theory that Ida and Lilith use the invisibility glyph to run away. Yeah, that could be a total possibility as well. So yeah, I do think that they're not going to get caught at this point, though. I think something's going on. Either Rain and the team has teamed up with them at this point, or they've escaped somehow and they're going off and doing their own plan. But yeah, I do think that they're not going to get captured at the end.
I am looking forward to Ida and Lilith Aren't Home, though. Directed by Greta Gerwig.
Yes. I'm sorry, Morgan. I don't know what anything is. I'm sorry. I apologize.
You committed a crime here today. The amount I've showed you about movies.
Yes, I know. I have no excuse at this point. Anyway, let's go ahead and wrap up this discussion because we do have to get into Amphibia. We're already going well into this.
That's right. A24 did do Moonlight. You got to watch Moonlight. That's a friggin' incredible film.
Yes, I do need to watch it. Do you think the Owl House will be destroyed? That's a great question, too.
If they destroy the Owl House, that's going to be something they do right at the end. I don't see that. Like, I feel like I can't see that happening until like way.
Yeah.
At the end of the series.
Also, something that's interesting, a detail that was pointed out in a previous episode that I totally missed. You know the window that's in the owl house, like that yellow and red eye looking window that's in the owl house?
Stained glass window, yeah.
That window was originally on the tower. And now on the tower, there's like a big circular, just empty hole. And so the house got built and the window got moved from the tower to the house, which I just think is interesting. I don't know.
How do we know it was originally on the tower? Has there been like...
There's a photo somewhere in the background of the owl house where it's this location without the house, and it's just the tower that has the window in it. I'll have to find it and send it to you, but that is a detail that someone pointed out.
I guess Ida was just like,
I'm gonna build a house here.
I'm gonna build a house here. I'm not using that friggin' tower. Hootie, do your thing.
Do your thing. Yeah, exactly. And then I'm gonna move the window though. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting detail that I never noticed before. But I'm curious to know if we'll find the origin story of the house at some point too. I wonder if that's gonna get explained to us at some point. Anyway, let's go ahead and wrap it up for not Amphibia, for Owl House for right now. We do got to get into Amphibia. Let's take a quick 2 to 3 minute break because I do have to use the restroom before we get into Amphibia, and then we'll get into it. How does that sound?
Yes, I'm gonna go get a glass of sparkling water.
Do it. Get some water, get some stretches, do your thing. We'll be back in just a couple minutes and we'll get into Amphibia. Oh, whoops. It didn't change to my intermission screen. I just walked off. That was awkward.
Who needs an intermission screen in this economy?
Alrighty, let's go ahead and get back into it, why don't we, since we are back. Tom, you back with us as well?
I never left.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I didn't even get
That's
the
a lie.
episode ready.
I actually did leave. I did leave.
I didn't even
lied
get the
to you.
episode freaking ready. All right, here it is though. This episode of Amphibia, so we didn't really talk about last week's episodes too much into too details. You know, they were definitely fun, but I realized that we did forget one major thing from last week. We forgot to talk about Leaf's little hidden room in the back of the planter, you know, catacomb. So Leaf did in fact have a little hidden room, which again just confirms to us that she was a planter. And then Sprig found the letter, right, which of course was blank at the end of the episode, but we know that they use invisible messaging and stuff like that, right? So it's clear that that letter is gonna come back in some way in the finale, and who knows what it says. If you guys have any theories about what that letter says, I'd love to hear it in the chat.
I mean, we watched The Big Lebowski yesterday, so I'm just imagining it
being a dude with a boner.
You're just a dude with a boner. Like, you do this big, you know.
Stop, that's so funny. Yeah, Tom and I watch movies sometimes, like on the weekends, and we watched The Big Lebowski yesterday, and I had never watched that movie before, and it was hilarious, and I loved it. And yes, totally, Spring is going to shine the light on the hidden letter, and it's just going to be a dude with a boner. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry. That's so funny.
That's not before they've drugged Sprig. They put friggin' drugs in his White Russian.
Oh my god, stop. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So anyway, yes, we're here in Amphibia. We're in Amphibia now. Yes, definitely gotta have the invisible ink on the letter. So we're here with the three armies, right? So this episode was a little bit of like a last one before we get going for real, right? Like, let's get our armies and everything together. I know that you didn't necessarily love this episode. I liked it. I thought it was great.
I didn't dislike it. To be clear, like what I was saying was in illustration of a larger point, which is that, like, why is this worthy of time when certain other things are deemed not necessarily not quite so worthy of time, but just could have done with a little more consideration as to how they were applied.
I think that's fine. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I didn't dislike this episode by any means. Like, I'm not riding the Amphibia high at the moment. I feel like this. I don't want to go as far as to say I think this is the weakest season, because I don't. I think there are just certain things in it that haven't appealed to me. I won't lie. The inclusion of Mr. X has been like every single time Mr. X showed up, it really took me out. But also, I just feel like this show works better when the stakes are not quite so high, personally.
Yeah, sure.
I've not been riding the Amphibia high. I've not been like quite so invested, but I'm still enjoying it plenty. You know, I don't think it's specifically like been, I don't know, lower quality or anything.
Yeah. I know that season 3 has been kind of like divisive. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. A lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about the way certain plots have been handled, certain characters have been handled. I tend to disagree with most of the like harshest of the criticisms.
Yeah, we're on the same page there.
But I think there is some criticisms that I think are worth looking at and worth kind of examining, and there are certain things definitely that the show could have done better, but I think overall I'm still loving what they're doing. I'm still greatly enjoying it. And like, I totally hear you about Mr. X. It's definitely annoying and frustrating. But at least for me, I'm able to kind of like just shrug it off and kind of look past it. It's totally understand if not everyone is able to.
That's just gonna have different mileage for different people. Exactly, I just can't. Like, the character looks like him. It just is him. And that is enough to kind of, anytime he's in an episode, it's almost enough to kind of ruin the episode for me. Like,
and I think that's fair.
Fast forward over every time he opens his stupid mouth.
That's fair.
But yeah, let's get into it.
Yes, let's get into it. So they are talking to all the armies, right? Sasha and Anne, and they're the group is just like, oh yeah, by the way, we all hate each other. So and Sasha is like really upset, right? She's like, are you telling me that like there's a chance you guys won't even work together? We spent all this time building this giant army and recruiting all of you guys to get here together, right? And then Hop Up has this funny line where he's just like, we're just saying there's an extremely high probability of that, yes. Which I thought was really funny. I did appreciate that, even though we were like in Endgame territory, right? Like, we're finally in the finale, the climax of Amphibia, right? Like, we're still not dropping the humor, right? Like, it's still gonna be really funny. which I really enjoy, which I super appreciate. And then we get this funny meme reference from Sasha, right, where Anne is like explaining, and Sasha gets all these math symbols on her face, and she's just like, "What?" This gave a good chuckle to me. I definitely laughed. I love how many memes and how many references there are to memes in this show.
What is this a reference to? What was that?
It's that meme of like that white lady who like is looking confused and she has like all these math symbols floating around her head. I'm sure if you see it, you'll recognize it. But yeah, it's just.
Oh yeah, no, oh that yeah. Sorry, I clocked out for a second. I was looking at a popo.
Oh, of course, of course. But of course, Anne is just like, I brought the track team and the Bag Geeks together. I can do anything, right? And we get this cute little flashback where it's like mediator of the year, Anne Boo Choi, and she's like pointing really excitedly at their handshake, which, yeah, I mean, like it is shown, right, that Anne is a good mediator, a good like person, neutral party between people. And she's like understanding and empathetic. So yeah, I like this line from Sasha too, which is funny. It's like, you pointed out that they both value proper lung control, and that's how you ended their feud.
I'm very, very, very glad that this episode didn't go in two potential directions that it could have gone in and didn't.
What's that?
The first being advocating for political neutrality.
Oh, right.
Which is just nope. That's a big no from me. And the second being later on, when she gets real mad and uses her powers, like, oh no, is the moral of the story going to be that they need a strong leader to rally behind? And they don't do that either, so I'm just very glad they steered clear.
Yeah, for sure.
Not Aaron Burrows requesting to see the Papo. I'll leave that to your discretion if that's something.
Maybe if we have time at the end. Because
they're all in the Discord chat.
We got two episodes to cover here. This was just a visual gag that tickled me. You know, as the armies are walking into Wartwood, of course the sign of Wartwood is partially destroyed, so it says "Welcome to War," which I thought was quite appropriate.
What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing. Well, you know.
Say it again.
War can be good for overthrowing mad tyrants occasionally. Beatrix and Trentonio show up, right? And they are now the people that they have to, convince to work together, right? And only because you toads are too slow, right? Like, I love this kind of like bickering rivalry they have, where Trentonio's like, oh, you guys are smelly, and like Beatrix is like, oh, you newts are like whatever, right? And so I'm gonna turn your tail into a toothpick, right? Like, I just love the kind of rivalry these guys have, and then of course they are willing to set aside their rivalry to take down the frogs a peg or two, right? Like, oh hey, do you hear something just now? Like, oh, it sounded like a little animal squeaking of nowhere, right? So even though these two hate each other, they will still take the time to shit on frogs when they get the chance.
Why is it that Grimes is English and his sister is Irish?
Good question. I mean, technically Ireland and Scotland are not a thing in Amphibia, so maybe they're just toad accents in Amphibia.
Where does Scotland come into it? Neither of them are Scottish.
I don't know. So Anne is like, who has two thumbs and is a neutral arbiter that fell out of the sky? And she points at herself, right? We get that photo again, which is quite funny. Hop being like, true, you did fall out of the sky. This idea does have merit, right? And then, of course, they are willing to give it a chance. Let the healing begin, right? Anne says as we get this cute little, anime pose from her.
Anime.
Yeah, anime, if you will. So the toads and the newts come in, right? Their steeds are yelling at Bessie. They check in their weapons, which Polly, of course, is very excited about, right? She ends up playing with the weapons, which is very typical Polly, quite funny. As usual. And then of course they sit around this like war room table, right? And they start strategizing. Sasha explains that Andrew's power coming from the music box, and they start throwing out these ideas, right? And of course they're not really getting along at this point.
I have to say I'm very disappointed that they didn't take this opportunity to make a Doctor Strangelove reference.
Oh,
and have And have Anne say, "What are you doing? You can't fight in here. This is the war room."
That's right. That's right.
They should have done, but they didn't do.
Missed opportunity. Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity. 0 out of 10.
But yeah, so they try to come up with a strategy, but of course they're still bickering, and it's like Trentodio has this idea of using orphans to sneak past the guards, and they're like, "Oh, that's dumb too." But Anne, of course, still writes it on the board, "Orphans?" question mark. And then of course they do end up coming up with a plan, right? They Hop Hop is actually like, "Would anyone like to hear my idea?" And they're like making fun of him like a frog with a battle strategy. What is it? A paint a barn, have a hoedown, right? So they're having fun making fun of Hop Hop.
Good old-fashioned racism.
Right, exactly. But Anne is like, "All right, time to bring out the big guns, time to do some team building exercises," right? And anyone who has ever done one of these in like a corporate setting knows how freaking annoying and how stupid that these things can be. Useless for sure. But she gives it a shot, right? Like they do like little mimicking exercises, and we get these like little goofy poses. I used to teach improv when I was like in college, and we used to do kind of similar exercises to these, right? Like these are very team building, like theater kid kind of like exercises, right? That you do to get everyone on the same page. But of course, these frogs, newts, and toads are not going to get along quite so easy. It's going to be a little more than just doing a little not exercise to get past their differences, right? They're obviously still bickering and arguing throughout all these exercises, like the newts calling the toads dumb, and then of course the toads just like using the brute strength, right, as they drag them along on the three-legged race and things like that. So obviously these team building exercises are not quite working out exactly as Anne is imagining it to. They even do the trust fall that Ida goofed up in one of the previous episodes.
When Ida died.
When Ida turned into a skeleton, exactly.
And then the episode just ended right there.
Yep.
With no further context.
The trust fall is so dumb, and my friends would always make me fall on my head. Oh no. Yeah, but just goes to show, right, how silly these exercises and stuff can be. Yeah, obviously it does not work the way that Anne wants it to, right? They end up fighting. This is a total disaster. It's fine. They're just blowing off steam. Anne tries to say, at least they don't have weapons. But of course, the toad's like, "Oh, did someone say weapons?" And of course, they go grab their weapons and make this much more brutal, right? And so
then they all die.
And then of course they all just kill each other here, and that's the end of the show.
It's literally, that's the finale. I wasn't expecting the finale.
It was very anticlimactic. Yeah.
And like they don't even like Andreas doesn't even come into it. It's very like, well, who knows?
Oh my god, yeah. So they're all ready to fight. They're hating each other guts. They're like, "Charge," right? And of course Anne is angry and desperate to stop this, and she ends up bluing out, right? She ends up going Super Say Anne. And ends up, intimidating them with like her blue powers. She's like, "Enough. If you guys aren't willing to work together, like I'll just figure it out on my own," right? Grime has this funny line where he's like, "Oh, probably should have led with the powers thing," which is funny. But yeah, she ends up, using her powers and saying, "I can't solve your problems for you. Only you can. I'll be on my own until you guys are ready to figure this out and help me," right? And this is, of course, the thing that allows them to see that their fighting is actually dumb, and they need to, of course, come together and work together. Sasha and Anne have like this moment too, right, where Anne is like upset and Sasha is like trying to comfort her. I do just really appreciate how far these two have come and like their friendship has come. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge these two.
They even have a dance routine.
They do.
Not in this episode, but they do have a dance routine. And if that's not a symbol of true friendship...
Exactly.
I don't know what is.
So the three of them end up coming in, right? And they have this plan where they're like, "We'll attack from the front, and then a small group of us will sneak in through the back and get the music box while they're distracted, right? And they love the plan. They think that's great. And we get this line, right? Which, of course, does come into play in the next episode. Sasha says, it's just like that movie, War of the Warlocks, right? That's the movie that Marcy made us watch every sleepover. Yeah, so I do kind of wish that I think we'll talk about this a little bit when we get to the next episode. Again, Marcy's absence from the season has been one of those divisive issues within the
I don't think
fans.
either you or I have been especially like I mean we've talked pretty extensively why that hasn't been like a big down point for either of us.
Yeah. So I don't think Marcy's absence has been a criticism really of the show that I have, at least. I think that they handled this really well in this episode. I didn't mind, the way that they talked about Marcy. I also like the direction that they're taking this arc, right? Like this idea of like Anne and Sasha thinking about Marcy's friendship and what it was like before Amphibia and what may have led her to taking such a drastic action, right? And I know that you had some slight issue with the way that it was at least presented in the next episode. And I do think that maybe they could have done a better job of bringing that up in this episode.
It doesn't even necessarily need to be something they do in this episode. It's just the way they chose to do it in the next episode is kind of clumsy. But in defense of Sasha and Anne, from what we've seen of War of the Warlocks, that is a boring movie. At the end when they're asleep and the end credits when they're asleep and she's just like sat watching it holds on this one shot of a hobbit stood on a cliff with some music for like a flat minute.
I mean, I think it's supposed to be, right, like a parody on like Lord of the Rings and War of the Worlds, right? War of the Warlocks.
It has nothing in common with War of the Worlds.
No, other than the world. But I mean, I think it is supposed to be like Lord of the Rings, right?
It's meant to be Lord of the Rings, but from what we've seen of it, it looks terrible and bad and boring.
Yeah.
I can't blame these two babs for falling asleep during a 1 minute long uncut shot of a man on a cliff with some music.
So Mother Ohm comes back, right, and gives them the heads up that, hey, by the way, it's not happening in 3 days, it's happening right now, y'all gotta go, right? And this is what kicks us off to finale territory. But yeah, I do agree that maybe the way that they handled like reintroducing the Marcy plot point into the next episode was a little clumsy. But I do like the way that they're taking this arc and the way that they're dealing with the conflict within their friendship.
Yeah, like the actual arc itself and the nature of the story, I have no issue with it. Just the way they chose to bring it up. Kind of made me chuckle a bit.
That's fair. That's fair. So is now a good time to mention, Sprig says that we're also allied with an army of mushroom zombies. Give him a minute. Which is just funny.
And nice. For all we know, they never ever explain that to them.
No, they never really do. I don't think so.
I just like to think they had to come to terms with that on the battlefield in the heat of the moment.
Exactly. But yeah, I do appreciate that we're getting these really good gags still in these last few episodes, because that's really what makes a show what it is, in my opinion. So here we are, the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the actual climax of the show. So we start off with this flashback, right? They're watching War of the Warlocks. The puny resistance stands no chance against my undead horde, blah, 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 right? And it's this very kind of like cheesy, over-the-top like movie. And Marcy is, of course, just super into it. She's super excited about it. Like, oh, I bet what... Like, I know what you're thinking. Like, they don't stand a chance, blah, blah, blah. But of course, it's clear that Anne and Sasha really are not invested in this story. And Marcy is explaining, right? Like, oh, this whole battle distraction is going to work. Like, they're going to sneak in and sneak out the back, right? And as soon as, like, this part happened, I was like, oh, clearly their plan to distract and sneak in the back isn't going to work. Because if Marcy already knows the plan, then obviously it's not going to work, right? And Sasha's like, whoa, spoiler alert, and because Marcy's getting so carried away, she's like talking about the film. But of course, Sasha is like, I don't actually care, right? Which I do feel for Marcy here.
That's rude. Yeah, I was only kidding before. Like, this movie does look boring as hell, but like,
yeah, but like,
sometimes you just gotta be respectful, and you just gotta kind of engage with these things
yeah,
because they
yeah,
matter to your friends, and
exactly. Like that's the thing,
ergo they
right?
matter to you.
That's
Or
the
they
thing,
should
right?
anyway.
Like when you love someone, you're willing to kind of like, and you're willing to like engage with them on their level, right? Like on what they want to engage with. And like this dismissal from Anne and Sasha, like I really do feel for Marcy in this scene, right? Like I feel like this is very relatable. I think like a lot of us, right? I like, especially those of us who are currently in the audience, I think we all relate to Marcy a lot in that we're also very passionate about our interests and our media that we consume, right? And we do try to share these things with like the people in our lives and the people that we love, and it can hurt, right? When something that is so important to us, especially if it's something that has influenced us into like the people that we are. Like something that is very close to us and our beliefs, like when we try to share those things with people and they don't engage with it on the same level as you, like it can be hurtful, right? It can feel like a dismissal and like a um like a feeling of like they don't care about me because they don't care about this thing that I care about so deeply. And so I do feel for Marcy here. It does really suck to be in this position of caring about something so deeply and like trying to share it with people you love and they just like don't feel the same way. Yeah, Tune agrees. Days says I wanted to get my friend into arcade, but he was on the phone this whole episode. Yeah, exactly, right. Like it's a shitty feeling.
But
It's a
then it's
bad
like,
feeling.
at that point, they're finding it boring because they're not even trying to engage. Like, if they're on their
Exactly.
phone, they're just not watching it, and then they're
Yeah.
going to be bored because they're not paying attention to anything that's happening.
Right. And even Marcy being like, this is my favorite part, right? And then like she just turns to look at them and they're like fast asleep. They like do not even pay attention at all, right? And like Marcy, like she's so sweet in this scene too, right? Like she's of course hurt, but she's not like mad at them, right? She doesn't like, but she is hurt, right? We know that her feelings are hurt, and she turns to watch the screen and she's engaged in this film. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to this too, right? Like at least I can relate to this, right? Where like I feel when the people in my life are not addressing my needs, I know that I can turn to my favorite shows, my favorite media to bring me that sense of like comfort, to make me feel like less alone, right? And I feel like this is a common thing for a lot of people who struggle to like connect with people in the way that Marcy does. Like we know that Marcy, has trouble connecting with people. That's something that's been established as part of her character, right? So I think like this turn to media, this turn to like comfort in like our favorite characters is something that is relatable, at least to me.
Yeah. God
And
knows the world kind of feels like it needs it at the moment. Comfort
right.
media.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then we cut back to the present day, right? Everyone is going over the plan. I think it's interesting too that the Ohms are here to help out too, right? So you've got the newts, the frogs, the toads, the Ohms, the mushrooms, the dominoes. Everyone is here to help us out, rescue Marcy, steal the box, right? That's the plan. Today we give Evil a big fat wedgie, which I enjoyed. That was fun. And so they head off. Yeah, Polly wrote that line, right? Of course, that we had to have a little Polly gag in there. So they're heading out, right? And we got the mushroom guys gearing up too. Everyone's packing up, getting ready to go up. Andrea's still not gonna know what hit him, right? They still think that they got the upper hand here, right? Anne is like, does anyone need to use the bathroom? Last chance, we got to throw in some last minute gags in there as well. Grime goes off to ride with the planters so that Sasha can chat with Anne, right? And we get this funny bit too where Grime takes Sasha's phone because he has a playlist of tunes to get amped for the battle.
His playlist of tunes was extremely unsatisfying.
It was, but at least we get this funny bit with Sasha, right, where she's like, "I'm so proud of you." Like, it just again just goes to show the way that Sasha has influenced Grime, and like their friendship has really changed both of the characters in a beautiful way.
Can I offer some constructive criticism?
Please.
The background you've used here with Darcy be doing a Dr. Octopus.
Yeah.
Why didn't you use the clip of the dance, of the Sasha and Anne dance?
I was thinking about it. But I felt like I needed to have Darcy in the background. I just felt like I needed to have her. She's been so absent for so long. I needed to have her.
You've committed a crime against me on this day.
I did really enjoy the dance, though. That was one of my favorite bits, for sure.
And it will not be forgotten lightly.
Okay, so here's where we get the exchange, right? And I do agree that this was a little clunky, a little clumsy, but I'm not mad about the fact that it wasn't brought up before this episode.
No, not at all. Like, it's, I think in the context that, yeah, they've now contextualized the nature of just how much Marcy is something of an afterthought, like canonically, within their friendship. Too. But even then, like, it wasn't like, we've talked before in terms of the nature of what the show is. We've talked before about why we aren't personally like bothered by that.
Yeah,
it's just the way they do it. It's the way it's like, oh shit, I guess we should talk about this, huh?
Yeah.
And they couldn't think of any better way to even like segue into that discussion.
Yeah,
or like just like anything to make it not feel like a post-it note plastered onto the script.
I do agree. It was a little awkward, just a little clumsy. But like, you know, some people are criticizing the show, saying like, oh, they haven't brought up Marcy. This is bad writing. This isn't about like Anne not caring. It's not about Anne compartmentalizing. It's just bad writing, right? And there's some people who say that. And then there are some people now after this episode who are saying, oh no, like it's canon how Anne and Sasha don't think about Marcy. So it makes sense that they didn't bring up Marcy because of that. And even that I would slightly push back on just a little bit and say like, no, I don't think it's even quite that. Like, I do think that Anne and Sasha were thinking about Marcy, but we haven't needed to talk about it because this is an episodic show, right? Like, I feel like the way that this finale is set up, like it feels like if someone wanted to come in and like just watch the finale, like they could, right? Like someone could start at this episode and watch to the end of the finale and get kind of like a good chunk of the story, right? And like that's just the nature of the show.
That's the nature of how the show works. Yeah, it's a much more
episodic,
old school style of cartoon writing.
Exactly. Like definitely there's continuity. There is a serialized plot. There's a story going on, overarching story, but it is closer to something like, I would say like Big City Greens, right? Where it's like episodic. There's a story within each episode rather than something like The Owl House, which is very serialized, right? Like you cannot watch an episode of The Owl House out of order, right? But in this one, in Amphibia, this is more of a traditional episodic show. So I feel like both of those extreme criticisms of like, oh, they didn't bring up Marcy because it's bad writing, or oh, they didn't bring up Marcy because it's great writing and because like it's intentional. I would challenge both of those and say like, no, it's just an episodic show, guys.
Zoe, you've just blown my freaking mind. I hadn't even thought about Evangelion with the dance. I hadn't even thought about it. But you are so right. How do you go through life with such a big brain? You're so right. There's for context, there is a Asuka and Shinji. There is a fight in Evangelion that they do by learning a dance together, like like a two-piece dance that's like all coordinated. And this is literally that. This is what that is.
Yeah.
It's oh my god.
That's really funny. Great. That's really funny.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So we get this conversation right between Sasha and Anne, and Sasha is a little bit hesitant, right? She's still very much hurt by Marcy's actions. Like, hey, she went behind our backs and did this thing, right? She got us trapped here. And Anne is really just showcasing her full empathy here, right? Like, besides maybe we're partially to blame, and at first Sasha is like hesitant, right? She's like, excuse me, but then, you know, Anne brings up the movie, and, you know, Sasha is still hesitant to want to empathize with this fully, right? Like, oh, it was a 3-hour movie, and explains, right? But it's not just the movie. We've ignored her interests, and maybe we've ignored her needs too, right? And that's really the crux of it, right? Like, it's not just about sitting and watching a 3-hour movie. It's about caring enough about your friend to care about what they care about, right? Like, it's about showing that you're willing to engage with them on that level and, like, be a part of their interests, right? Like, this is something that, like, clearly Marcy did need. And like, I also relate to this in a way, because, like, we know that Marcy has this kind of fractured relationship with her parents. And as someone who grew up with, like, also a somewhat fractured relationship with their parents, right? Like, we really cling to our friends for that support, right? Like, for that, like, feeling like we're being heard and understood by the people around us, right? So, like, as someone, for me, who felt like very misunderstood by my parents, that made it, like, all the more important for me to, like, engage with my friends on this level, right? And so, like, I do feel for Marcy here, like, as someone who maybe is not getting the attention she needs from her parents, like, she's not feeling understood by her parents, wants to feel understood by her friends, and the fact that they're not willing to engage with her on that level, like, I do feel bad for her, right?
Yeah, totally.
Let's see. People misunderstood this bit like Marcy did. They thought Anne was justifying. Yeah, again, like, it's not about justifying her actions, right? Like, so Sasha has this line here, right? Like, she's like, maybe if we save Marcy, could we even still save our friendship, right? So this is like her questioning, like, is what she did deserving of forgiveness, right? And Anne is like, I don't really know about that, but we have to try, right? And I don't think it's in this conversation, but she does have this line, right, where she's like, it's not about what she did, it's about why she did it, right? And I really, really love that line. I really love that kind of ethos of the show. Like, this is a very big theme of the show, right? Like, empathy, understanding the motivations of why other people did the things they did, right? Like, understanding what are their motivations, what caused them to do this thing, and, like, really understanding that in order to come up with, like, a solution, right? Like, they're like, yeah, you guys know what I mean. Obviously, empathy is a really big theme in this show, and I really love how that's really, like, Anne's empathy is being put to the test here, right? Like, you really do have to focus on the why and not the what, right? When it comes to forgiveness. And this is actually, like, a lesson that I learned from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Heyo, finally brought it up an hour and a half into the stream. But this is a lesson that I learned from Buffy, right? Like, where forgiveness as this concept, it's not about whether someone deserves it or not. Like, forgiveness is not about deserving. And you don't forgive someone because they deserve it. You forgive someone because you love them. Like, that's really what forgiveness is, guys. Like, forgiveness is not about, like, justice. It's not about right or wrong. It's not about, like, what the other person did or the consequences or the damage. It's about how much you love the other person. Because if you love someone, like, you will forgive them for, like, anything, right? I mean, like, someone brought up Arcane earlier, right? And, like, there's a lot of idea about, like, forgiveness and empathy there too, right? And, like, this idea of, like, love and unconditionally loving people even despite their mistakes and things like that, right? So, like, I feel like this is a big theme in the show of Amphibia, and this is like a something that I have carried with me since I was young, since I learned this lesson from Buffy. Like, forgiveness is not about deserving, it's about love, and it's about caring for the other person. And it ultimately doesn't matter whether someone deserves forgiveness or not. Like, that's not the reason you forgive someone, you know? You forgive someone because you love them. I really do believe that.
Yeah. I don't know. That I will say my one rebuttal to that is that logic is often used to legitimize abusive relationships.
Yes, and I do have to say, like, forgiveness is never owed to someone, right? Like, but like, that's the thing too. Like, if someone treats you badly and someone says, "Oh, you have to forgive them because, like, you are supposed to love them, right? Like I think that's wrong. Like you're not supposed to forgive someone, you're not supposed to love someone.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you do love someone, you are willing to forgive them.
To that degree, we are then acknowledging that what a person did actually does matter in the consideration of whether or not they deserve forgiveness.
Right. I mean, of course.
So I disagree. I think that's a nice line from a good show that actually, if we were to scrutinize that under any detail, it would kind of fall apart. In my opinion,
I'm willing to disagree with you on that.
Okay, but if the second we agree, which we do, that there are cases where you don't simply forgive someone because you love them, then we're agreeing that what they did comes into the consideration of whether or not you forgive them, right?
You're kind of losing me a little bit.
So the quote you said was that like we don't like when it comes to forgiving people, it doesn't matter what they did or whether or not they deserve it, right? And that idea of deserving is really important and interesting because that's such like a nebulous idea. Like who has the moral authority to decide who deserves forgiveness?
Right.
But in my opinion, if we're using that kind of rhetoric, we're sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because actually what people do and the severity of what people do and the impact it has on your dynamic with that person and you know, these are extremely important things to consider when you're, and you know, it's for the idea of forgiveness. This is my take on it, right? The idea of forgiveness is way too nuanced to make any sweeping statements about it, including a statement like we forgive people because we love them. Like the idea of forgiveness is way too complicated for that, especially when you consider the idea that forgiveness often comes up in dynamics where love is not even involved, like forgiveness between strangers, forgiveness between nations, even, you know, like I don't know. I'm tentative to make sweeping.
I think we're saying the same thing. I'm obviously simplifying it. Forgiveness looks different depending on the situation, right? So I'm not saying like amnesty should be granted no matter what, right? Like that's like I'm saying forgiveness. And like forgiveness is also very interpersonal in my opinion, right? And so like that's the other thing too, right? Like forgiveness can come, how do I want to say this?
I feel like you've cleared up a lot by differentiating between amnesty and forgiveness.
Exactly. Like you can forgive someone because you love them, but they can still you can still think you can forgive someone and love them, but you can still acknowledge that there needs to be some consequences for their actions. Like all that can be true.
I'm just thinking of that line in BioShock Infinite. The Lord forgives, but that doesn't mean I have to.
Right, exactly. And that's the other thing too, right? Like forgiveness is on an individual basis, right? Like it's like one thing that really bothers me about like when influencers or celebrities like make their apologies, right? Is like the people who end up forgiving them are not the people like actually affected by the harm that they've done a lot of times. At least that's like a pattern that I've noticed. And so like forgiveness, right? Like it's a very nebulous thing. It's a very nuanced thing. It's a very personal thing, right? And so yeah, this idea of like forgiveness doesn't automatically mean like amnesty from consequences, right? So like you can forgive someone because you love them and also acknowledge like, okay, but like you still need to do X, Y, and Z to correct the mistakes that you've made, right? And if they're like actually sorry, if they're actually like feeling bad for what they've done, then they'll do those things, right? Ideally.
Yeah. Except some things are unforgivable, like texting and looking at your phone throughout when you should be watching Arcane.
Right, exactly. You know, that shit is unforgivable. Totally.
Unforgivable. That's in some countries that's actually punishable by death. And rightfully so.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, if a friend is acting like that, you're well within your rights to kill them, to just kill them.
Exactly. Punishable by death. Absolutely. 100%.
Punishable by death. Yeah, that's, you know, I think we can all agree.
Yeah, exactly.
On that.
Yeah, and Morgan puts it in a nice way too. Like forgive but don't forget, right? So you can forgive someone, but you don't necessarily have to say like, okay, but you're off the hook, right?
Rest in spaghetti. Never forget.
I had to pause on this frame as the Amphibia Rebellion army is charging and attacking the Andreas's army, because in the background, I don't know if you caught this, in the background we see the vulture and the grub hog from that episode where they were supposed to kill the grub hog and then it escaped or whatever, and it's there in the background, in the blurry background. He actually showed up for the final battle.
And they will be the ones to deal the
final blow,
deathly blow.
There were just a lot of fun callbacks in this battle in general.
Great to see the Moss Man.
Yes.
Get resolution to that.
This little moment with Andreas too did get a chuckle out of me, right? Where he's like sipping his stupid little champagne glass and he's like, that's actually a pretty big army. Guess I better get down there.
Who the hell drinks cider out of a champagne glass?
It's freaking like raspberry sparkling cider. Like, you freaking dork.
That's like, cider is such like in England, cider is such just like a belligerent, I don't know how else to describe it. It's like a belligerent drink. It's not a fancy drink.
Yeah, absolutely. I also like that Mrs. Croker is the one who like took the charge of the army. That's pretty funny too. Grimes is here rocking out to his stupid tunes playlist, and this is just a fun moment right before things get real. Hello, stealth mission. Oh, right, sorry. They go in and they try to save the music box, and Marcy obviously does not quite go the way that they want it to, because Marcy obviously knows, she recognizes the plan, right? Because it's from the movie. Okay, and then Anne and Sasha, again, continue this dialogue, right? So Sasha says, like, okay, if we have been taking Marcy for granted, that doesn't change what she's done, right? And this is just that idea, right? That it's not about what she did, it's about why she did it, right? And this is that idea that I said where, like, forgiveness is more about how you feel about the other person, more so like what they actually did. And like, of course you can acknowledge that they have to take steps to repair the harm that they've caused, but like, forgiveness as a concept is something that you give to someone because you love them. Right? Because like Sasha says, like, it's supposed to be easy, right? And Anne even says, right, like, forgiveness is hard and it can take time, right? Like, forgiveness is not just this idea of like, everything's fine and okay, let's go back hunky-dory to the way things were, but like, it's just an acknowledgement of like I still love you. Like, that's really, I think, what forgiveness is. Like, I know you've made mistakes, but I still love you despite that, right? And I feel like Anne, this acknowledgement of Hop Pop too here, right? Like, we were remembering the time that Hop Pop stole the music box, and obviously that was like a huge betrayal for Anne too, but like, again, it was about why he did it, right? Like, he did it to protect his family, and like, that's something that we can all kind of empathize with, and they were able to repair the relationship. Anne was able to do the same thing with Sasha too, right? Like, give her forgiveness because of why she did the things she did. And Anne even says this too, right? Like, look at what you and I have now, right? And of course, Sasha acknowledges that, and it's like, of course, you're right. Let's go save that lovable nerd and make things right. And I really love that line. I thought that was great. Oh, did I lose you, or are you just silent?
I'm just silent. I've nothing to add.
Okay, no worries.
I will say it's like 9:30, and I'm absolutely knackered. So okay. if I'm sort of dropping off a bit.
No worries. We'll try to wrap this up.
I'll chime in the best I can. But if I'm a bit silent, forgive me.
No worries. I totally understand. Okay, so Olivia and Yunan freaking show up, right? They're here. They are here, and they've got the mind control collars on them, right? And they try to get through them, but of course, Hobop's like, you're wasting their breath. Also, can we just acknowledge how amazing the animation is in this episode? I feel like they've definitely upped the production for this episode. Like, they've got this really dynamic lighting and all this stuff that really adds to the drama. And this episode just looks amazing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they allocated more of their budget to these final episodes.
Yeah, it's especially with that whole dance.
Yeah, the dance sequence too is really good.
Great. It's so cute.
It's adorable. Yeah. So they're fighting, right? They're Olivia and Yunan and Super in Sync. We get these fun callbacks to all these old characters too. We get the hotel attendant, the one that's voiced by Kristen Shaw, which is great. Great to see her back as she takes out these robots. Beatrix is taking out the robots. Tritonio is taking out this giant worm guy, but of course Jeremy and Apothecary Gary, right, jump on this guy and end up kind of using the mind control spores to switch them to our side, and that's really cool. That's a fun mechanic that I wasn't really expecting to play out that way, but it makes a lot of sense and is cool. And then we get this clip of Loggle, right, going mano a mano with this robot and like wrestling him, which is just really satisfying. I just really enjoyed that. And then
they really did some stuff with Loggle that no one saw coming.
They really did. But I am 100% for it. I'm all for it. The Ohms are here too, right? They're taking out the robots, which is great. I love this bit. I absolutely cheered when this part happened, right? Wally is face to face with this giant robot that's about to take him out. But of course, these leaves and vines end up coming out of the robot and breaking down. And then we get this reveal, right? I legitimately cheered when the Moss Man showed up, and it was awesome. And then Wally being like, I told you he was real, and like all the characters like cheering in the background. I loved that so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was so great to me.
It's the Amphibia equivalent of Cap wielding Mjolnir.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my gosh. And then Andreas shows up, right? And he's like, well, don't stop a might count, right? He's like being a total ass with his giant flame sword. And of course, the armies decided to charge him, and they end up fighting. This is just kind of a little bit of a funny battle scene, right? With Andreas swinging his giant sword, trying to get these guys. And then in the meantime, Anne and Sasha are fighting Olivia and Yunan. And yes, totally Rooster. This is some lesbian versus lesbian combat going on here. Yeah, they're two in sync, right? And of course, Anne and Sasha are like, they're not the only ones in sync. Remember that fusion dance routine we always used to do, which I really love, right? And we actually kind of got a foreshadowing to this a little bit too with the flashback scene of them doing the like DDR dance together, right? So yeah, that was just super enjoyable. I am going to like kind of skip over the dance though, because I'm worried that I'm gonna get flagged for copyright if I actually play it.
All that matters is that Anne basically turns to Sasha and says, we gotta dodge roll.
Yep.
We gotta make use of those iframes.
Yep. Use the power of gay to dodge roll is what they do.
They're doing their dodge roll, and that's how they win.
Yeah.
And they're using their Black Knight halberd.
Yeah, the shippers loved it. I loved it. I thought it was great.
And it's the speedrun strats.
Yes, the speedrun strats of dance power. And I'm sure it was a reference to. So yeah, they end up freeing Olivia and Yunan from the collars, right? And they're like, all right, we gotta go save Marcy now. And Olivia and Yunan do try to warn them, right? They try to say like, no, wait, Marcy's changed. Let me explain first. She's not the girl you used to know, right? But Anne, of course, misinterprets that, and she's like, well, neither are me and Sasha, right? And
you dumb idiot baby.
You dumb idiot baby, you sweet poor summer child. But yeah, they
walled in the cloth of ignorance.
Right, exactly. So they try to get the box, but of course it's fake, it's a hologram, it's a trap. Darcy saw this coming from a mile away, right? Because she was familiar with the War of the Warlocks plan already, and of course we saw this coming as well. Hello, girls. We finally get the Darcy and the girls finally meet. Nice of you to fall for a trap, right? So this is the lighting in this scene was also awesome too. Really added to the ambiance and like just the tenseness of the scene, which I really liked. So Darcy explains, right, like, we're not Marcy, we're a collection of Amphibia's greatest mind. I was waiting for her to introduce herself as Darcy, though. That I felt we got robbed. But of course she explains, right, like, or Darcy explains, like, oh, we've got her trapped up here. That's how we were able to recognize the plan. And then Sasha's like, give us our friend back, right? And then Darcy has this line, right, where she's like, oh, your friend? Don't be silly. You're not friends, not anymore. Examining Marcy's memory, it's doubtful you ever were, right? And of course, she's kind of referencing the flashback that we got at the beginning of this episode, right? Where Sasha and Anne were taking Marcy for granted, and Sasha kind of like internalizes this a bit, right? And we know that Sasha is a character that does tend to like turn her guilt inwards. So she is, I feel like, kind of blaming herself now at this point, but Anne tries to snap her out of it, right? Like, don't listen to it. Like, this is evil lying thing, right? And I love the way they animated Darcy in this scene too, right? Like they animate her like a newt, like an amphibian, which is just like got this creepy snake-like quality to it, which I really enjoyed. As she's like antagonizing Anne, right? Like, oh, somehow the rebellion's last hope, which obviously is just antagonizing them, right? And then as Darcy shows, the resistance that the leaders are captured, that the rebellion is over, she's like, obviously trying to get this to cut out and to end the rebellion, right?
Who was the teen friend group in Gravity Falls? What was the kid who was just like the group toilet paper?
Oh yeah, there's like
Thompson or something. Is that Thompson?
That kid, right? Oh, maybe it was Thompson or Thomas or something along those lines.
I think it was Thompson.
I think it was Thompson. Yeah.
Make him lick the horrible sponge.
yeah. I remember.
Is that who Marcy is? Is Marcy the Thompson of their friend group?
100%. 100%.
She's like, oh, judging by her memories, you were never friends to begin with, and it just cuts to them cheering her on, licking the disgusting sponge.
Yeah, 100%.
Jesus
100%.
Christ.
Yeah, I totally agree, Morgan, that the Sashan dance did definitely make me feel very happy. I was gushing for sure. It was really adorable. Yeah, so it is interesting, right, that Darcy calls Anne dumb, but of course Anne ends up outsmarting Darcy, right, in this next scene, which is just goes to show how much our dumb idiot baby has really grown. Outsmarting.
I will say I didn't buy this. I didn't buy this. And outsmarting this like hive mind of geniuses with
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was like just one of those things where it's like
I'm not like bothered by it, but it is one of those things where it's like, no, I don't buy that. I just don't buy it. Especially since it's like it is one of those things that's like really obvious, because it was a thought. It was my very first thought as soon as the direction of the scene became clear. My very first thought was like, how do we know that? How do we know that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't buy that in this entire like congregation of genius genius brains, no one thought of that. Really?
I do like that, because I feel like part of what is going to eventually lead to the core / Andreas's downfall is this like underestimation of Anne. So maybe
it's not about the underestimation of Anne. It's the idea that they wouldn't have considered that. The idea that they wouldn't have considered what is really, really obvious.
I'm willing to suspend my disbelief for that, just because I did like this. I liked this in a thematic way of like Anne considering something that like the core didn't consider, because like the core just doesn't think in that way, and like it underestimates Anne and like thinks it knows everything already. And so I see what you're saying. It's a little hard to swallow, but I was willing to let it go for the sake of how much I liked it thematically.
I am not.
Well, that's just your opinion, man.
That's like your opinion, man.
That's just like your opinion.
See, now I can't be mad because you made a big Lebowski reference.
Made a reference. There we go. So yeah, and
you used quite so many cuss words. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, so Anne does say this line, right? Like, oh, how do you know that killing me won't just extinguish the box altogether, right? And Andreas tries to be all antagonist. It's like, you think the core hasn't considered? But of course, the core hasn't considered, right? And so she's like, shut up, Andreas. And I love this visual too, right? Of like all the eyes like closing as the core is like pondering and like thinking about this. And then of course it opens its eyes again. It's like, we cannot reach a consensus, right? And so for now, we will have to confirm that the energy can be safely extracted before killing it, right? So I liked it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. And just being like, wait, did I seriously outsmart you? That tickled me. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, being aware of how unlikely it is doesn't do anything to assuage my criticism.
That's fair.
It's not like a deal breaker, but it's like I'm not like, I know there's a thing that people will sometimes say where it's like, it's just a kid show, don't think about it. It's like, okay, yeah, but it's not made by kids, it's made by adults. So I'm going to scrutinize it the same way I would scrutinize anything. And if I were watching a show for adults that pulled the same thing, I would still be questioning, like, how did this hive mind of geniuses not think about this?
I feel like it goes to show more of it about its arrogance than anything else, which I think works. But I did like this line. Or like this line at least gets me kind of excited or like speculative, you know, where Darcy's like, have the rest of them fitted for collars immediately. So I'm wondering if we're gonna have kind of like a, you know, Shadow Link kind of battle where we're fighting against our friends who are all mind controlled or something like that. I just think that would be fun if that happens in the finale.
And then Apothecary Gary can save the day.
Yeah, come through, Gary.
Friggin' Gary.
And then we get this epic like ending, right, which really just sets us up for the finale, right, in a really epic way. And of course, like, yeah, it's just like we're in it now. We're really in it now. We're in the end game. We're in the climax, right? This was funny to me, right? Where we see the characters of LA. We see these like, you know, little background characters. And then we get this line from one person, right? Where they're like, it's the big one, duck and cover. For those of you who are not from California and might not know what that might mean.
I did know what it was. Were you proud of me for knowing what it was? I'm actually
quite proud of you for knowing what she was talking about. She's talking about earthquakes. You know, for those of you who live in California, and you know that earthquakes are quite common.
Very susceptible to earthquakes.
Very susceptible to earthquakes. Also,
waiting for the big one.
And kind of specifically what that means too is back in like the 1940s, we had a very big, devastating earthquake in the San Francisco area that destroyed so many buildings, and you know, obviously a lot of people died, and it was really tragic, and it was a really it was a really important event in California history in particular because it really shaped the way that we've like developed our infrastructure from here on out, right? Obviously we needed to make stuff that was like more tolerative of being shaken by the earth. So when she says like, oh, it's the big one, duck and cover, she's talking about like, this is the next big earthquake, right? Like this is the one that's gonna destroy the buildings and take us all out. But of course, no, it's not an earthquake. It's just an alien alternate dimension invasion, right? Which also tends to happen every couple decades or so.
Did you just say tolerative?
What did I tolerant of shaking? That's what I meant. Y'all, I don't know words. I'm like Shakespeare, okay? I just come up with my own words.
Wally and Shaq pair.
Exactly. So yeah, I loved this. I feel like this maybe was a reference to something like this, the aliens in the sky and the spaceships and stuff, obviously. But if it was a reference to it, something, then I missed it. But this was just really, you know, a really nice shot to get before the to be continued. Is this ominous spaceships, UFOs in the sky, right, as the shadows loom over the tiny citizens on the ground. So yeah, we're here, we're in it. The alien invasion has started, to be continued. We'll see how this plays out exactly. And you know, I think it's clear that the Earth rebellion is going to come back in some way too. Anne's parents and maybe the FBI are going to team up to take out the frogs or whatever. And of course, Darcy is going to have to be taken out in some way, taken out of Marcy. I know that we got that promo of like the three girls dancing, and I know that we were speculating that that was some sort of like mind prison that the Corps has got Marcy in. So I'm really interested to see what's going on with Marcy inside the Corps. I feel like that's going to be really interesting and really informative of like where her character arc is going to go from here. I know that some people, I've read, again, there's a lot of criticisms of season 3, but I've seen some worry about how we're not going to have enough time to go through Marcy's entire character arc. I'm not really worried about that. We were able to cover Sasha's character arc in like a handful of episodes, and you know, we've got a 44-minute, 29-minute episode for these next couple weeks. So I think we're going to be fine in doing Darcy's character arc, Marcy's character arc.
These are not terribly complicated character arcs.
Yeah.
By design, like that's not a criticism. They're not terribly complicated character arcs. It's not like going to take much.
They are
for them
nuanced, right? Like there are like different aspects of this, right? Like there's Marcy's family life. There's Marcy's like motivations. There's Marcy's like, well, there's all these pieces, right? But it's not.
I don't want it to seem like I'm dunking on it for being uncomplicated. Like I said, it's uncomplicated by design. Like
right, exactly.
Basically everything else about the show because of the nature of what the show is. It's this is not, we're not watching Arcane here.
Exactly.
Where a character's arc in Arcane is deeply embroiled with the nature of the society they live in and all these massive socioeconomic layers that compound upon the way we view people and the way they behave. It's not that. An arc like that takes time and patience and care.
Right.
These are not those arcs. Like I'm not concerned. Like they were able. I was not.
Yeah.
You'll remember I was like not massively sold on Sasha for a while because I just like. I was just frustrated at the fact I was kind of expected as an audience member to just be okay with this character who tried to kill a kid. It was pushing my mileage a little.
Right.
In terms of my comfort. But like all it took was one episode for me to be like, okay, yeah, no, I'm on board now. Like
Exactly. And like the Amphibia writers have shown that they know how to write an economical script, right? Like they're not wasting our time too much, really. So I feel like it's gonna be good. I'm nervous. I'm excited. Obviously they can pack a lot into an 11-minute episode. Next week we're gonna get a 22-minute episode, and then the week after that we've got our big finale, the 44-minute ones. So I feel like they're gonna cover a lot of ground. There's a lot to cover, and they're gonna do it, and I have total faith in them.
Indeed.
But yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up here. If there are any other final thoughts or theories about how this Amphibia finale is going to play out, I would love to hear them in the chat, or if you're in our Discord server, you can talk about it in there as well. Even though I'm not super active in the Discord, just because I have so much stuff going on in my life right now, even though I'm not chiming into the conversations in the Discord, I am reading all of them, and I love hearing your guys' thoughts. I love reading your guys' speculation. That's a lot of fun, and I do think that a lot of you are also onto some interesting theories. So I'd love to continue to hear those as we get into the final Endgame of Amphibia. I'm sad to see this show go because I've enjoyed it so much, but also I'm really excited to see the end, and I'm really grateful that y'all are on this journey along with me. It's super fun sharing this show with all of y'all, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your Sundays every week to come hang out with us and chat about these shows with us. Tom, do you have any final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns before we wrap it up?
Do we have time to share some puppos with people?
Of course we have time to share some puppos.
There's a wonderful selection of I've just been quietly filling our chat with puppos. So there's a selection. Let's
take a look here. I don't want to show all of them because it
you don't have to show all of them. Just there's a selection. There's ones to choose from.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we have to show... So this is a pup that we follow a lot. This is a pup that we see many pictures of. His name is Ranger, and we love him.
He's got a wonderful little face.
Look at Ranger's little face here. Look at his adorable little puppo face. We love his face, and we love him. He's one of our favorite boys. He has a ball pit, as you can see in the background of this photo here. He has this ball pit that he loves, and we love seeing pictures of Ranger. He's a good boy. Oh, the next week is the 46 one, and the one after that is 22. Interesting. I didn't realize it was flipped like that, but thank you. I see. Yes, he's a puppy. Who else do we want to show?
There's some potato in there. There's some tiny little ones.
Let's show this happy little bab here. Look at him. Look at his little smile. Oh, he's a sausage. I love him. Okay. I hope y'all are enjoying that.
I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for the stream to catch up. I'm still on Ranger at the moment. Which one? I don't know which one you've chosen.
It's the one tied to a chair.
He's just like, just giving us a big old smile.
This little smiley
standing there in the sun.
Oh, y'all are about to learn some puppo terminology here. So when puppos do this maneuver, when they're on their tummies and they've got their feeps outstretched behind them, This is what we call in the industry, the scientific puppo industry. This is called a sploot. That's actually the term for it. That's actually really what people call it.
Official terminology.
Look at this puppo sploot. It's very good. Anyway. Yeah, Tom and I just send puppos to each other back and forth on Discord all day. That's literally like 90% of our conversation.
Because puppos are magical and they make life more livable.
They do. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up here for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. As always, we'll be back next week to discuss the next episodes of Outhouse and the last 44-minute Amphibia episode, and then we're on to finale. So yeah, thank you all again so much for joining us. Sunday, 11 a.m. PST. We'll be back next week. If you need to go back and rewatch parts of this, please do. Yeah, we'll see you in the Discord server. Get vaccinated if you're able to. All that good stuff.
Yes.
Take care of yourselves and each other, and be kind to yourself if you can. That's something I'm working on too.
Go and freaking use the bathroom.
All right, bye everyone. Have a good night. See you next week.
Bye.